Good evening, everybody. We're going to start off with the pledge, and I do want to say that on Monday we made some new history, but with the opening of this evening's sessions, we are reflecting on the defining events of 1775, culminating with the Declaration of Independence in 1776. By gathering together tonight, we maintain and renew a tradition of self-government practiced for over 400 years, and we honor and embrace town meetings of 250 years ago. They were local democracies that by their nature taught the new Americans the virtues and responsibilities of self-government. It was through these town meetings colonial America embraced the right of self-determination, which fueled a revolution against British Empire's control. On April 19th, our town commemorated the 250th anniversary of the brave colonists of South Dedham, now Norwood, who left their homes and headed to Dedham Center. 60 men, ranging from age 17 to 58, mustered to join the conflict. 21 of these courageous colonists are buried in our old parish cemetery. In commemoration, as part of that event, the Colonial Boys, Norwood's own Irish-American fife and drum corps, established in 1953, led over 200 of us to muster in Old Parish Cemetery. Tonight we honor those 60 colonists and our own Colonial Boys. I'm going to ask Mark Hoover, who's dressed appropriately, representing the Colonial Boys and the voice of the Colonial Boys, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise and remain standing for a moment of silent reflection and prayer immediately after the pledge. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Thank you, Mark. That was fire. And Mark promises that next year, because it will be the 250th anniversary of our nation's founding, that we are going to get the full Colonial Boys here to play us in. You know, I've always wanted to make this announcement. License number 2EM213, a gray car, your alarm and lights are going off in the parking lot. You may want to run out and take care of your car. Also want to recognize we missed on Monday and we missed tonight our beloved selectman, Bill Plasko, who we know would be here, who is under the weather. Bill, we know you're watching at home, probably saying everything we're doing wrong, certainly everything I'm doing wrong. We wish you a speedy recovery and can't wait for you to get back with us. All right, so again, we're utilizing electronic voting. And we will have a standard time limit. Before we move on, we're going to have everybody test their clicker, test your electronic voting device. Let's make sure they're working. Sean, can you cue that up? Opening the vote. You should see your number, assigned number. Register. You can also look on your keypad to see if it says OK. And I'm not going to ask a question tonight because I don't want to jinx the Celtics. All right, everybody, good. All right, just a reminder, clickers are collected when you leave the auditorium, so if you're going to go out to get a drink of water or use facilities, bring your clicker, hand it to one of the members of Team Town Clerk. At the end of the evening, please return your electronic voting device, and remember, your last vote counts, so you can change your mind before I call the 10-second warning, and it will be your last, what you register as the last vote that counts. Town meeting seating, I see that we have our town meeting members that are sitting below the tape. Thank you, non-town meeting members behind the police tape. Mr. Riccardi, it is so apropos that you're sitting behind the police tape. Thank you for that. And Mr. Folan. All right. All questions go through the moderator. When you're called to speak, as a town meeting member, please state your name and your district number. Wait for a mic. Again, big thank you to Kevin and Jeff, who are our mic runners. And we really appreciate the speed at which they're doing it. If you can make it to the front mic, that is really helpful, but don't worry if you can't. And I think everybody knows sponsors have 10 minutes. Subsequent speakers are limited to 5. One-time extension can be granted by the body. And there is no limit on debate. Only town meeting can stop debate, which is by someone moving the question, and that takes a 2/3 vote for your approval. Only business published in the warrant can be addressed, so only motions around that. And if you have registered to speak, I will call you within the order you registered. NCM is carrying this live, so we are on live streaming and on live cable, so please keep that in mind. And again, we have Dignity Index. We had a great lively debates on several issues on Monday. You guys were fantastic about that, and very mindful of doing it in a dignified manner, not a contemptuous one, so thank you for that. Also, please be considerate of your fellow members in the audience. I know that sometimes with people, your seatmates, you want to discuss a particular article or something that somebody said. Please be mindful of the fact that people are trying to listen to the recognized speaker, and they're trying to participate and hear, so please limit your chatter if possible. And then lastly, we do have a quorum, so I want to remind everybody that special town meeting number 2 was called for 6:30 this evening, with the annual town meeting already in progress but temporarily adjourned. So we need to open special town meeting number 2 and adjourn it for the purpose of adjourning, and then we will adjourn until we finish the annual town meeting. So, Mr. Donnelly, I'm going to ask, I'm going to ask you to make a motion that we open special town meeting number 2 and adjourn it until we finish the annual town meeting. And Mr. Lane, have you second that? Thank you. Let's do a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right. I now call the annual town meeting back in session. And we are on Article 4, motion number 1. And before we go to the FinCom on that, I just want to remind everybody, you will be seeing the motions up on the screen. Following along, the warrant, the articles, and the detail are all in your budget book. If you go to section number 3, you will see the summary. We will be voting on categories, but The detail that is under those categories is part of what you're voting on. So that includes, and this, the one exception is the school budget that we vote a bottom line on. But for every other category, you're going to be voting any salaries, any equipment, specific categories for those budget items. I'm sure Ms. Bodenhofer will re-explain that again as well. All right, Ms. Bodenhofer, are you ready? Yep. All right, with the motion.
Moved by the Finance Commission that the sum of $240,798 be transferred from water sewer receipts, the sum of $311,080 be transferred from free cash, and the sum of $6,525,750 be raised by taxation and appropriated for the purposes indicated. All sums voted for salaries are to be expended in conformance with the official budget of the Finance Commission unless otherwise voted by the town meeting. All sums voted for new equipment shall be expended for items listed in the budgets approved by the Finance Commission and voted by the town meeting. As displayed in the budget book, restrictions by salaries totals, operating expenses totals, and capital expenses totals are explicitly included into this vote. This is number one, the general government total for $7,777,628.
All right, and Ms. Sullivan, you're seconding? Yes. On the motion, Ms. Bodenhofer.
FinCom unanimously recommends this budget.
Okay. I do have a registered speaker on this first motion. So let me call on Brian Gunning, District 3. Mr. Gunning, you come to the front? Or do you, okay, thank you, sir. Please remember to identify yourself before you start.
Good evening, Brian Gunning, District 3. I am speaking in regard to the budget. Generally, it's well known that very soon this town is going to be facing a financial crisis. We are not going to have enough revenue for the expenditures that we're making. I'm here tonight to say that I have seen nothing coming from this, from the Finance Commission or the board showing that we're actually trying to cut expenses here and now. We're spending, the school budget is increasing by 6.7%. And regarding the school budget, I'm not sure what we're paying for. The school...
Mr. Gunning,
yes.
There will be a separate motion on the schools, so you can speak on the schools then. I think these are general comments on the budget.
My general comment on the budget is that we should be looking to cut costs, not spend more money. We don't have enough money. We're taking free money. We're putting it into dedicated accounts that we're not going to be able to use later on to meet budget shortfalls. We shouldn't be doing that. We should be cutting money. We should be thinking about that and nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gunning. Again, general government. Anything further? All right. Well, yes. Wait for a mic, please.
Good evening, Carrie Barrows, District 8. I hear what we're saying about cutting finances and stuff, but my wonderment is around the idea of putting the excess cash that we have this year, stow it away so that we don't have to go against what we don't have in the future. Let me reframe that. It seems to me fiscally responsible that when we have a surplus of cash, that we store it away in accounts for what we know is coming down the lines. In regards to the budgets that you're referring to, the school committee is requesting budgets for special education, which is a federally mandated requirement for towns to follow. We don't have a choice.
Ms. Bowers, again, I'm cautioning we're not talking about the school budget.
So I agree with being fiscally responsible. I agree with cutting the budget, but I feel that we are doing that by looking at our surplus this year.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Should be on.
Donna Montgomery, District 6.
Yeah, you're
Donna
on.
Montgomery, District 6. I'm on the Board of Trustees of the library, and I know that we went, the whole board, and Clayton in particular, who's the director, went through the budget a number of times with recommendations from Tony Mizuko as to where we could cut and how much we could cut, and can we do better, and he went, and we did. And I know that this same technique was applied to every single one of the boards that accumulates money. All of the things that we do in the town were reviewed before they actually made it to the budget book. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sobchak?
Amy Sobchak, District 4. Just a question. We're taking money out of free cash, and my question is, if we didn't have this free cash, what would this budget look like? I remember a number of years ago, the school committee had to present a budget that was 2 budgets at town meeting, and because of cuts that may or may not have gone through. And I don't see us being given any information about what would have happened if we didn't have any free cash. And I feel like we are entitled to at least have seen what some of this would have looked like, instead of just saying, we have free cash and we're going to put it all to this because we're not going to look at any cuts and we're not going to tell you what it would look like with these cuts. And I think that that's really unfair that you did this to us and presented it like this.
Who wants, is there a response? Ms. Bonhoeffer, do you want that, or Mr. DeMizzuko? We're actually talking about general government, so I think we should have Mr. DeMizzuko.
Well, that's not going to work. So to your point, the Board of Selectmen did do that. It was actually covered extensively at one of their meetings where they looked at the budget at the minimal amount that we had, what that would be if instead of going up 4.5%, if it was at 3.5%, what would it look like at 2.5%, at 1.5%, and 1%. And, a variety of the cuts that you'd see to the budget were outlined. And I know Dr. Luff can talk to the specifics on the school. They do go through that process of seeing what is this going to look like. At the end of the day, with most of the budgets, significant cuts end up being reductions in bodies, because that's where the majority of the budget goes to, is bodies. But that exercise has gone through every year. The Board of Selectmen went through it pretty extensively at one of their meetings, and it was covered at budget balancing meeting as well. And budget balancing is where there's a decision on how much free cash should we use to offset the budget, how do we balance our revenues. That number is agreed to, and then everyone has to go back and meet that number.
Is there a follow-up, Ms. Sobchak?
I don't recall seeing any selectmen meeting that said, if we had to do this, it would be X amount of dollars to, say, the fire department or to the police department, and that it would translate into actual personnel. Now, I'm not looking to do that. That is not my intent. I recognize that, we have money and we need to use it, but I really feel like sometimes we don't give people the opportunity to really see the full picture here at town meeting, and I think that it would be, moving forward, I think that would be a recommendation that I would have, that you present it here at this body so that we would have a choice, so that if we didn't want to appropriate the funds, we would see what it would actually look like, or if people had those questions. It's just a recommendation.
All right, thank you, Ms. Sobchak. Ms. Dixon, I saw your hand up.
Doris Dixon, District 1. Hopefully I won't start coughing again. Sorry. My biggest question, as I went through this line by line like I always do, is do we have an org chart? Because with the way these are presented now, we cannot see what jobs are in each area. I mean, obviously you can look at the first line item under general manager and we know which one is Tony. But after that, I have no idea who reports to Tony anymore. As I recall, at least one admin position was given up and turned into an analyst, I think, and people were moved around. But that's just a vague recollection, and I think an org chart might help understand some of this.
All right, Mr. Mizuko, do you want to take that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Moderator. One is included for every single department, as well as a chart of each position and any increases or decreases in the budget book. We don't present it right with the line item budget because it makes it a little bit more difficult to scroll through. But if you go to the back of your budget book, there's one prepared for every single department, lists out their goals and their objectives. It lists all the different positions, the number of bodies in that position.
It's Section 4.
Section 4.
Section 4 of your budget, the supporting schedules, and in the supporting schedules, for instance, I am looking at the Director of Finance, Town Accountant, on 4H-9. And it has, I think what you're asking for right there, Ms. Dixon, org chart plus the different positions. All right, so are you all set, Ms. Dixon? Or you have a follow-up? Can you stand if you do?
Didn't we have 2 admins for the selectmen and 2 under you, Tony? And where did they go? Where did the positions go?
So the Selectmen's Office used to have 2 admins, and then there were 2 admins in the Manager's Office. There's now 1 in the Selectmen's Office, they have an executive assistant, the manager has an executive assistant, and we have a, like a shared admin between us. The total staffing between the 2, it's one office, the total staffing has gone down by 1 in the last couple of years.
Okay. And have we considered,
Ms. Dixon, are you asking another question?
I'm sorry, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
In this savings effort, have we considered, as people retire, instead of just shuffling them and moving them around and changing their job descriptions, have we considered maybe removing the positions to save some money?
Mr. Mizuko, do you want to take that? Or
Yes.
do you, okay.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. We have, just as I said, the total office used to have additional staff. We've reduced that staff number. Every time a position in general government opens up, we review it. Do we need to fill the position? Is there something else we can do? Do we not? Can we move the position? Can we cut the position? The total office has 1 less than it did 3 years ago.
Thanks.
All right, all set. Thank you. All right, let's move over here to Ms. Mankiewicz in the back.
Ann Makowitz, District 7 representative. I'd like to know if the Culture and Recreation budget is at bare bones.
All right,
This-
hold on. We are
Isn't
not
that-
talking about that right now.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Look at the categories that we're talking about right up here. We'll get to it, and I'll be happy to call on you. All right, Ms. Doyle.
Cheryl Doyle, District 6. I'm just curious, since we've been moving all the free cash around and all that, and we're putting it in all these categories, if we run that down, is it setting us up for an override and putting us in a worse position that we are in right now?
All right, I'm going to have Ms. Bodenhofer address that one. Chair of the FinCom.
Thank you. There's honestly 2 schools of thought on this, right? We do have a lot of free cash available. So on the one hand, we can use that money, we can kind of keep that money available, keep it as flexible as possible so that we can help offset the operating budget every year. But then once we get to the end of that amount of money, then our backs are really up against the wall and there's no safety net anymore. The other option is to try to obviously, ideally, we would not spend any free cash on the operating budget. This particular motion, we're looking at $311,000, but all told throughout the operating budget, we're looking at $7.45 million of free cash will be offsetting the operating budget. As we said the other night, that's not ideal, but that was a compromise between what was originally requested and what cuts would have to be made if, we didn't give the full amount of free cash that was originally requested to support the budget, but we also didn't ask the administration to cut to 0 free cash. But the other kind of school of thought on how do we deal with this is we put some money away in long-term savings. We don't leave quite as much available to support the operating budget, and we expect that that helps us maybe rein in our tendencies to increase expenditures. I mean, there's some things we can't avoid increases in, but that the less free cash that is available, the more pressure there is to rein in our spending a little bit. So, there's kind of two ways of thinking about it. It's up to this body how we want to move forward ultimately. But that is something that the FinCom has been talking a lot about, is how do we manage this large windfall of free cash and handle it in a responsible way.
Is there a follow-up, Ms. Doyle?
So hypothetically speaking, what would have happened if FM Global didn't do their big construction thing? Say they decided they weren't going to do it, they were going to stay happy as little pigs in a blanket sitting there. What if Moderna didn't do anything? How in the world were you guys going to balance the budget then? Because you wouldn't have had that windfall. So it would have seemed like you would have figured out a way to do this budgeting instead of relying on windfalls that may not come anymore. Our nation is not in a good position right now. There are cuts all over the place. And my biggest fear for this town is it's going to slap us upside the head, and then we're going to go, oh no, why didn't we do this and why didn't we do that? So I think everybody, regardless what board you sit in, whether you're a town meeting member or whatever, I think we need to wake up and pay attention to what's going on and actually start sharpening our pencils a little bit more than what we've been doing. No disrespect to anybody, because I know everybody works hard, and I have to say I like the idea that Selectman Donnelly had come up with at a selectmen's meeting of putting a board together to start looking more 5 years and keep it revolving on the 5 years and start tightening everything up.
Thank you, Ms. Doyle. Ms. Quinn?
Sarah Quinn, District 2. I don't have anything exciting to add, except could we please have the actual motion up on the screen with the dollar amounts in it? Like what's coming from free cash, what's coming from, thank you. It's in the book.
And I'll read it as well, 24798 from water and sewer receipts, 300,011 and 80 to be transferred from free cash, and 6,525,750 raised from taxation. All right. Anything further on motion one? Yes, in the back.
Hi, Jonathan Kane, District 6. Madam Moderator, just a general question on the budget book. I hope it's appropriate at this time. I'm wondering if it's possible to include in the book percent changes from prior year, so we can see the increase or decrease to a certain budget line item. You know, for instance, I can see the general government total expense was up 3.8%. I see IT is up 5.3%, and I see treasurer expenses up 8.6%. That helps raise questions as far as why is one line item up significantly higher, or you know, it would just be helpful for I think some people in the crowd.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for that feedback. Anything further? Mr. Hofkrath?
Francis Hopcroft, District 1. I was wondering what sort of legal issues we got pending. I noticed that FY24 we only spent $221,000. Last year we budgeted $442,000. Now we carried that over, or $444,000 rather, and we carried that over. What are we expecting that we're going to have to litigate that much money on?
Mr. Mizuko, do you want to take that?
Will do, thank you. That FY24 number was an aberration where it was substantially lower than the average that we've been spending. That money is not just for litigation. Our base town council contract is about $100,000 a year for just town council. That includes labor, in addition to that, there's labor council and there's other council that we use. So that $400,000 number, we've been increasing that every year. This is the first year we feel we can say it's flat, because that's roughly what we're spending in a year. There's occasionally a spike in a year where we're doing collective bargaining, where we need a little bit more use of labor council, and then that drops off a little bit in subsequent years.
Thank you, Mr. Hopcroft. Anything further? Yes, sir. Oh, hold on.
Mark Mandigo, District 3. Just have a question, Madam Moderator. In the scenarios that the selectmen are looking at, does that include one of the scenarios, Proposition 2.5 override?
I'm not quite sure. Can you clarify the question? I don't think anybody's looking at a proposition for this budget right now. This budget is this budget, so there's nothing on the table beyond this budget.
Okay, I'm sorry. We were talking about future planning, 5-year plans, things like that. So I didn't know if override would be included in those type of plans. That was previously mentioned.
Let's have Ms. Bodenhofer, the chair of the FinCom. She can give, and she also chairs the Budget Balancing Committee, so she's a good person to address that.
Thank you.
As we discussed on Monday night, the plan for free cash includes, at this point, $11 million in free cash from this year, which would roll over to next year. And we would also anticipate that there will be some more free cash coming in next year. I don't think we're anywhere in the neighborhood of 29 million, but typically, you know, 3 to 6 million in addition to the 11. So when we, as the Budget Balancing Committee, looked at this year's budget, we said, we feel that there's enough free cash to support this year's budget and not leave us with nothing for next year if we had to. So early indications are that we would have enough to support a similar level of spending next year. If we wanted to keep that level of spending, and if we want to go with that level of spending next year, lots of decisions to be made in the future, then we would potentially be looking at a Proposition 2.5 override in 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the question. All right. Anything further? Mr. Alfanos.
Greg Alfanos, District 9. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just a quick clarification where it says on the motion, the sum of $6,500,000 to be raised by taxation. Can we clarify what taxation?
Ms. Bodenhofer.
That includes our, it's primarily our real estate taxes, but it also includes the local receipts and, you know, like excise taxes and meals taxes and personal property tax, things like that.
You follow up, Mr. Alfanos?
Thank you. So by voting for this motion, we're giving the town the ability to pick and choose where it's going to raise taxes?
No.
No. Go ahead, Ms. Bodenhofer.
By law, the Board of Selectmen sets the tax rate, and that is determined. So with this whole plan, if you accept this whole budget as presented, then that balances out if we assume that the property taxes go up by the 2.5% plus the free cash. If you look in the section 1 of the budget book, there is information there about what the taxes are. If you, page 11 has, so the total property tax revenue, we project $111,492,950.
You're planning on...
Do you have a follow-up, Mr. Alfanos?
Yes, thank you, Madam Moderator. So you're planning on, when you say taxation, you're planning on growth of the revenue numbers, of taxation numbers, not
Ms.
addition.
Bodenhofer? Ms. Bodenhofer?
Yes, Budget Balancing Committee builds the budget around the expected 2.5% increase plus new growth. New growth refers to properties that have been developed. So I live over near the Prescott, there's a few new houses going up there. That land was taxed at one level. When you add 5 or 6 houses to it, that's now more value, and so that brings in additional revenue. So that's also included. Anything that we already know is coming is included. I want to be careful. I don't think those 5 houses are included yet because they're not complete. We don't like guess, but we look every year and say how much did it go up last year, and then we add that in.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Fafanos, if you want to go over there and try to get the taxes from them, I think they're probably... Thank you. Anything further? Mr. Connolly?
Move the question, Madam Moderator.
All right, Mr. Connolly has moved the question. Do I have a second? Mr. McFarland has seconded. All right. Again, this is non-debatable and takes a two-thirds majority. It means we will stop debating and go directly to voting. So we're now voting on moving the question, two-thirds majority. Give ourselves a second to get that queued up. All right, I'm opening the vote. 60 seconds. This is on the question, moving the question on motion 1 of Article 4. Ten seconds. Close the vote. All right, that clearly passed. 148 yes, 15 no, and 1 abstention. So we are now voting on Article 4, Motion 1, which is general government. This is a total of $7,077,628. Let's open the vote. This is a majority vote. Ten seconds. Let's close the vote. And the motion passes 137 to 28 with 1 abstention. That takes us to Article 4, Motion Number 2 by the FinCom, Ms. Bodenhofer.
Moved that the sum of $986,304 be transferred from free cash and the sum of $20,690,394 be raised by taxation and appropriated for the purposes indicated. All sums voted for salaries are to be expended in conformance with the official budget of the Finance Commission unless otherwise voted by the town meeting. All sums voted for new equipment shall be expended for items listed in the budgets approved by the Finance Commission and voted by the town meeting. As displayed in the budget book, restrictions by salaries totals, operating expenses totals, and capital expenses totals are explicitly incorporated into this vote. This is for public safety for a total of $21,676,698.
All right, and Ms. Sullivan, you're seconding. And Ms. Bodenhofer on the motion.
FinCom unanimously recommends this motion.
All right, thank you. All right, I do have one registered speaker, Mr. Connolly. And again, this is on public safety.
Kevin Connolly, District 7, through you to the fire chief. Can I get a update on the ladder truck? Where is it? And how many shifts has it been out?
Okay, and Chief, you want us, we'll run a mic to you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Tim Bailey, Fire Chief. The ladder truck has been out 2 different periods of time. It went out in October. At that time, we had to replace the transmission and the transmission cooler. We got the truck back at the end of November. We had it until the beginning of February, and we had problems with the new transmission overheating. They weren't able to diagnose the problem. It is still out. This past Monday, we sent our mechanic up to the place that is taking care of doing the repairs for the truck. They tore it apart. They did an extensive overhaul of the transmission again. They did find one piece of it that is in need of repair. That piece will be going in tomorrow, and we hope to have the truck back either late tomorrow or first thing on Monday. And they assure us that it should be okay at this point.
Thank you, Chief. Is there a follow-up, Mr. Connolly?
Yes, Madam Moderator. Can you explain to the body what's the primary function or all of the function is for the ladder truck?
Well, I can't, but I bet Chief Bailey can.
The ladder truck is used for a lot of things, primarily for getting onto roofs, for getting to areas of height. But we also use it for blocking major motor vehicle accidents. We use it for CO calls, and a various amount of other things that we do on the fire side.
So you again, Madam Moderator? So right now we are running with 3 engine companies, and the oldest engine is how old again?
Chief?
Yeah, the oldest one is 22 years old.
And is it 3 companies as well?
Yes, we're operating 3 companies currently. So when the ladder truck goes out of service, we do put the ladder company into a reserve piece. We have ladders on all of our engines, so we're able to operate in a limited capacity with our ladders that are on the engines, and we rely on mutual aid for a ladder truck.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. No other questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Connolly, and thank you, Mr. Chief Bailey. Mr. Easy.
Thank you. Paul Easy, District 3. I have a question about the condition of the building.
Do we mean in police and fire station?
Yes.
Yeah, public safety building?
The public safety building. Are there any, I mean, it's not an old building. I feel like it was just, built not that long ago. But I'd like to know if there are any big ticket items that need to be done inside the building.
All right, we got a couple. We do have Mr. Riccardi here, but does Mr. Mizuko is going to take that. All right, Mr. Mizuko.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. We are finishing up the HVAC and roof project, which was an expensive project. Bids came in today for the floor. There might be, there's no major capital repair project scheduled anytime soon. We do at some point need to look at a way to get our turnout gear off the floor. That might require building something in the back of the building, not a major structure, but a storage unit. That might come at somewhat of a cost. The building's 20 years old. It's in okay shape for 20 years, but this is the point where we do need to start replacing some of the systems. But we're just on the heels of finishing a $4.5 million HVAC project approved, I think, 3 or 4 years ago.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Easy. All right, Ms. Dixon.
Doris Dixon, District 1. I only have 2 questions, and I probably should have asked them both last year, but I didn't. paid holidays all of a sudden went from about 90,000 to 400,000. I must have slept through the why. And where are the costs for the Holbrook Dispatch Center?
All right, Mr. Mizuko, I think you're taking that. And Chief Patton's at the ready if necessary.
Yeah, I'll start with the second question. We are not paying for the Holbrook Regional Dispatch until next year, so that's why there's no cost booked for it. And as for the holiday pay, if you give me just a second to get it up, one of the answers I can give you off the top of my head before the chief gets a chance to answer is holiday pay is a little bit speculative based on what folks are actually working for the holiday, whether they take the holiday pay or work the holiday, so that number is somewhat in flux. Are you referring to holiday pay, though, in police or fire?
Police.
Okay. Yeah,
All right, why don't we have Chief Patton answer that?
Thank you. Chris Padden, Chief of Police. So what happens is we have a certain number of contractually obligated holidays every year. We're up to 14 since Juneteenth, and officers have the opportunity to either take that for pay or to take a time due or a day off when we can fill it without it costing overtime. What you're looking at in the budget book is what we actually spend versus what we budget. So when we actually spend the year before, that's the actual number, $90,000. Those officers opted, and we have a very young police force that doesn't have a lot of vacation time, so they opt to take those days a lot in order to get time off. And then the budget number you have is what it would actually cost us if we were to pay all those out, which we have to have. When we don't pay those out, we use that to cover overtime and to close our overtime gap. So that's why those numbers. And next year you'll see the same thing. That number will be lower, and then it'll show in a higher number. We have to show what we're budgeting versus what we're actually spending. Okay, thank you.
Okay, no follow-up, Mr. Dixon? Thank you. Anything else on public safety? All right, I'm seeing none, so we're going to put it to a vote. This is majority again. And why don't we get the motion up there, too? Thank you. So this is for a total of $21,676,698. All right, and let's open the vote. Ten seconds. And let's close the vote. Motion passes 150 to 14 with 2 abstentions. That takes us to Article 4, Motion 3, Infrastructure. Ms. Bodenhofer.
Moved by the Finance Commission that the sum of $125,000 be transferred from cemetery receipts from the sale of lots and graves fund 4901, that the sum of $454,852 be transferred from water or sewer receipts, that the sum of $498 be transferred from free cash, and that the sum of $8,653,265 be raised by taxation and appropriated for the purposes indicated. All sums voted for the salaries to be expended in conformance with the official budget of the Finance Commission unless otherwise voted by the town meeting. All sums voted for new equipment shall be expended for items listed in the budgets approved by the Finance Commission and voted by the town meeting. As displayed in the budget books, restrictions by salaries, totals, operating expenses totals, and capital expenses totals are explicitly incorporated into this vote. This is for infrastructure for a total of $9,645,615.
And Ms. Sullivan, you're seconding? And Ms. Bodenhofer on the motion.
FinCom unanimously recommends this motion.
Thank you. Mr. Hofkoff.
Francis Hopcroft, District 1. Can we have an update on the 5 or 10 or whatever it was intersections that were supposed to be getting repaired and redone along Washington Street in Haddon? And how much is in this budget for that?
Why don't we have Mr. Ryan take that, Mr. Hopcroft?
Madam Moderator, Mark Ryan, Director of Public Works and Town Engineer. That project was bid $4.9 million. Coviello Electric is the contractor. We've been working through getting all the submittals. We expect you'll see some excavations begin probably the beginning of June.
Follow up? Okay. Good? Oh, thank you. Yes, Ms. Matthews?
I'm curious, Ms. Makowitz, District 7.
Thank you.
Hello?
It's on.
We spend twice as much on ice and snow removal than we do all year on road maintenance. Why is that?
Who would like to take that? Mr. Mizuko would.
The candid answer is we don't have to fix roads, we have to remove snow. And that $1 million number on snow and ice is roughly what a 5-year average is. The storm of 2015, I think, so a decade ago, we spent maybe $1.6 million. We'd love to spend more on road maintenance, but the reality is we have to take care of snow and ice, and as we've heard, we have some budget constraints. In addition to what's in the budget, we do receive about $800,000 a year from the state in what we call Chapter 90 money, which goes right into road paving.
Is there a follow-up, Ms. Makowitz, or you're fine? You're good, okay. Anyone else? Mr. Lynch?
Thank you. Ed Lynch, District 7. So on the airport, the $355,000, is that, does the airport generate money?
Mr. Mizuka?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Yes, the airport generates probably north of $400,000 a year in lease fees and rental fees and landing fees and a couple of other charges they have.
Is there a follow-up, Mr. Lynch?
Yes. So is the airport planning to extend the runways? Is that in the plans, and is there any dialogue on that coming?
Mr. Mizuko?
Has there been?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I think I can sort of answer two questions here. One, the airport maintains a capital plan where they're always looking to improve as they're required the facilities and the conditions at the airport. There's always a concern that any extension of the runway would allow larger or more planes to come in. The airport is only rated for the types of planes it has. We could never let fundamentally larger planes come into Norwood. Every now and then there's a project to pave the end of the runway, which might be the project you're referring to, which just enhances the safety at the airport. It doesn't change the category of airplane that's coming into the airport. Every now and then people say that, hey, we hear there's 767s coming, they're going to be landing at Norwood Airport. We'd have to relocate the interstate, Route 1, Blue Hills, ponds and lakes. It's never going to happen. The airport is categorized to do what it does. There's an extensive capital improvement program that they have to occasionally pave parts of the runway. They may extend them. None of that changes the category of airplane that can come into the airport.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Anything further? Yes, Mr. Konieczny.
Yes, Madam Moderator, I'm Steve Konieczny, District 4. The airport, I'm surprised to see that it only generates about, that looks like about $50,000 a year in revenue after the expenses. I'm surprised that it's so low and that there's nothing we can do to raise that, because that's pretty much a wash.
I guess Mr. Mizuko wants to, I don't know if it was a rhetorical question, but Mr. Mizuko wants to respond to it, so go for it.
Sure. So it's possible that the airport could raise $0 and we would still operate an airport. Could the airport raise more money? It does periodically look at its fees, like all departments, to see if it can increase those fees. Every few years, just like everything else, you can raise those fees. You can only raise fees so high on any service. Of course, the airport being busier would lead to more fees if we had more landings and more takeoffs. But I don't know that that's necessarily the direction we want to go in. The fact that it covers generally most of its costs is fairly good for municipal airports our size. Some make money, they tend to be busier, or they have more land that they can lease out. Some make no money at all, and they're just a cost, and you have to accept that nobody really thought airports would become what they were when cities and towns were accepting them in the 30s and 40s.
Is there a follow-up?
Yes. So you mentioned takeoffs and landings. Do we charge for takeoffs and landings?
Mr. Mizuko?
Yes, we do.
We do.
What's the,
I can defer to the airport manager for the exact charge. I know the airport commission reviews it every couple of years and adjusts it upwards. Mark, can you explain what we charge for landing fees?
Why don't you step up to a mic? And also, in case people don't know who you are, sir, can you identify yourself? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mark Raymond, Airport Manager. We have a structure depending on the weight of the aircraft. More weight, the landing fees are higher. We only charge for transient aircraft. We do not charge for the aircraft that are based at the airport. And last time we raised the fees was, I believe it was February 2024. We do review it from time to time. We look at what the other airports in the Commonwealth are charging, and we base our fees on that. We try to be comparable with the other airports in the Commonwealth.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Escow?
Thank you. Tony Esco, District 5. Through you, Madam Moderator. This motion, if I wrote it down correctly, included $454,852 from the water and sewer receipts. I think that was right. And then in the previous motion for general government, we also had use of water receipts of $240,798. So now we're up to about $700,000 of water and sewer receipts. So did we not estimate well what needed to be collected from the ratepayers? And isn't this money that technically could have been used to lower the ratepayers' bills in the future fiscal year? And is this an unusual amount of receipts to be using to fund the operating budget? I actually can't recall whether or not this is an unusual sum to be using to offset the budget.
All right, we're going to have, well, all right, we were going to have Mr. O'Neill do it. And Mr. Mizuko is deferring to you, so we'll have our Director of Finance, Jeff O'Neill, answer that question.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Through you. So to answer your question is the water and sewer, these are indirect charges from that fund. So what that means is we pay for the administration, technology, liability insurance, and other stuff in the general fund that is then charged to the water sewer fund as an indirect charge. You'll see that as a line item in their budget. So for each of these categories, they are paying some sort of offset to the actual budgets in these categories from that. So no, that money cannot stay in the enterprise fund. It is paying for services that the general fund offers.
Is there a follow-up?
Moderator, through you. So it's not allowed to be returned to ratepayers because they're indirect costs?
Correct, through the moderator. So it is a charge to the fund for services offered by the general fund, insurance, technology, administration, some DPW charges, salary charges, offsets. So it's not money that can be returned, no.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Ayers-Pierre? Catherine?
Thank you. Catherine Unger, Pier District 9, through you, Madam Moderator, to I believe the town manager. Regarding waste management, do we have any information about the Black Earth composting pilot, and if continuing that would decrease those costs as trash collection gets ever higher?
All right, I think Mr. Donnelly and Mr. Mizuko are fighting over your question.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'll defer to Mr. Donnelly to speak briefly on the program.
All right, we'll have Mr. Donnelly answer that.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So the program is running until the end of September. Currently, we have about 665 subscribers. We have another few weeks to go before we end the program, and at such time, we'll be able to evaluate the tonnage that's been diverted from the waste stream. Right now, I can tell you that it's probably a few tons a year. Maybe it might save $50,000 a year, but primarily it's not a program that puts a big dent into trash costs, but it does put some dent into it. And hopefully when the pilot is over, people will continue to participate in it, and the town will begin to also benefit from that trash, that food waste not being sent into the trash. But more to come in that. But right now, at 665 participants, you're not going to see a great big dent in the diversion of food or trash by food from that amount of people.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. Is there a follow-up?
Only that if the pilot proves to be useful, would there be continuing to look into if the town was going to provide that as a service for not just the 600 or so residents, but everybody?
Mr. Donnelly?
It's an evaluation that we need to do in September when the program pilot ends. That's a possibility, but as we've talked about earlier, there are a number of fiscal constraints that we are currently undergoing, and there needs to be some planning, as we discussed earlier. So can't guarantee that's a situation. That would be a cost to the town that we'd have to do a cost-benefit analysis of. But, it's a possibility, but it's not what most municipalities, very few municipalities provide free of cost compost waste, curbside services to their residents. Very few.
All right, thank you, Mr. Donnelly. All right. Anybody else? All right, I'm not seeing a hand raised, so it looks like we are, sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Ferris. My apologies.
Edward Ferris, District 8. Through you, Madam Moderator. A couple of questions. First, about the airport, I was just curious. I was wondering if the airport is selling and using avgas that still has lead in it to any of the planes operating out of there.
Mark, do you want, yeah, let's have Mark take that, yeah. Have the airport manager take that.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Again, Mark Raymond, the airport manager. Yes, it's still legal for sale in the United States. That's under the federal government. That's not under the local airport authority, whether or not we sell it.
Follow up,
Thank you.
Mr. Ferris?
Second question, actually. Is there anyone who can provide an update, Madam Moderator, on the work going on Upland Road?
I think that may be the other Mark. Let's have Mr. Ryan.
Madam Moderator, Mark Ryan, Director of Public Works. That is a state project. PGOSO & Sons is the contractor. We're in the second year of that project. It's moving slower than expected. We're waiting on the gas company to start replacement of a gas line along Washington Street. My understanding is that's going to start shortly. We were hoping for this project to be completed this year, but it looks like it'll go into the beginning of next year.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ferris. All right, anybody else? Yes, sir. Mr. Gunning.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Brian Gunning, District 3. Thank you for the fine work done by all of the people at the cemetery. The money's no problem, but I do have a question again regarding the allocation of free money. We have just north of 20 million in free money. So this question would be directed, Madam Moderator, I believe, to the Finance Commission.
So you're talking free cash, right?
We have free cash
Yep.
of just north of 20 million. Everyone in this room is fearful that there will eventually be an override request, a vote. So my question is, why aren't we using every single penny that we can now, save it, for when that day comes that we know is coming? Why are we spending it now rather than saving it to meet that budget crisis that we know is imminent? Thank you.
All right, I'm going to have Ms. Bowden. I think that has been asked and answered a couple of times thus far, but Ms. Bodenhofer, do you want to take that, or do we want to give Mr. Mizuko a turn now? All right, Tony, Mr. Mizuko can take that one now.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Through you to the body. The question is, we're using an amount of free cash to offset the budget. And to say, well, let's not use that and save that, well, then we have a deficit in the budget, and we would either be raising taxes more now or laying staff off now. I mean, we can't absorb major cuts to the budget without cuts to staff, and that means bodies in the schools and bodies in public safety and bodies in the town. So we have these three really unenviable situations. One is lay staff off. Nobody wants to do that. One is have an override. Nobody wants to do that. We want to avoid those two things as much as possible. Three is use free cash to balance the budget. That's not a good thing. It is better than the other two things. So we are putting some money aside. Nobody wants an override. Nobody wants to have to reduce staffing. We may have to, but that's not a good thing. So we're doing the lesser of three evils, if you will, by using some of that money now. So there's no way to say don't use it now and use it in the future. If you say you're saving for a rainy day, it's raining a little bit right now.
Is there a follow-up?
Yes, there is a fourth option, am I not correct? It seems like we're hiring people now. Should we not be hiring people?
Mr. Mizuko, and again, we're talking about, I want to caution, I know we're addressing, I'm being nice, letting people talk about the budget in general rather than categories, but since we're talking about the general government budget right now, Mr. Mizuko, you want to address that from a general government standpoint?
Sure, I think I can answer that in a general way. The short answer is yes. The problem is if we were to simply say, well, let's stop filling positions so we don't have to cut them, what if the next 5 vacancies happen to be at the police department? So just because 5 officers who came on together happen to retire, now we're going to cut public safety, we're going to cut police staffing by 5 positions. We don't have any significant large amount of employees in one area. You know, we don't have 35 analysts working in a division. We don't have 28 payroll clerks that we could say, hey, we've got to reduce the numbers. Most departments in town hall are 4 or 5. Public safety are about 65 each. And then the library, council on aging, and senior center are very short. It's the same thing on the schools. If you need 5 fifth grade teachers and 2 happen to retire, we can't say, well, we're just not teaching 5th grade anymore. That's why we review every position we have, but to simply say, let's not fill them, it doesn't always work in our favor to simply say, great, this position here is unfilled and this position here is unfilled. Just one more example on the school side, the Dr. Gallen took a position.
Let's
if I could,
not,
Madam, just for 30 seconds, the high school principal took a different job. We can't not have a high school principal, so that's why the idea of a hiring freeze and saying, well, just don't fill positions just doesn't work with how we're structured that well.
And Mr. Mizuko, I would appreciate it if you would stick to the general government side that we're talking about right now. Thank you. Yes, sir. Any follow-up?
Yes, through you, Madam Moderator, please. You talked about how much, is there a formula that you're using for the free money, the free cash, the allocation that you're keeping for potential future budget shortfalls, which we know are coming?
Okay, well, you know what, I'll be honest with you, Mr. Downey. That, Mrs. Bodenhofer has explained that a couple of times, but Ms. Bodenhofer, would you talk again about what we're doing with free cash overall? And that's in your pink sheet as well.
Certainly. Yes, we did not have a formal formula. This is an unusual situation that we had never come across this level of free cash before. So it's not, we do not have a policy that says when you get this amount of extra money, 25% of it must go here and 25% must go there. We don't have those. But we did do calculations to see where those numbers would go. We did share that in our presentation. I'm just quickly flipping to the right slide. We spent all told about 27% of it on capital items. Those are one-time things. Those are by spending cash on those, that reduces borrowing costs going forward. So our debt service is less. We talked about how debt service for this year is less than it was last year. We put 8.7% in reserves or stabilization funds for long-term stability. We are using 25% of that amount for this year's operating budget, and we are passing a little over 35% of this year's free cash forward to next year.
All right,
Thank you very much.
Anything further? And again, want to stick to the particular category that we're talking about, the particular motion. I understand people have general questions on the budget, so being a little loose on that. Yes, sir.
Doug Jassett, District 7. It seems like each department needs a little bit of free cash to balance the budget. So in the next year or two, what we should do is, within each department, if we have 1,100 full-time employees, identify 30 or 40 people who are close to retirement and put aside a couple $1 million from free cash and offer a buyout in the town, maybe a $25,000 buyout. Somebody who's been thinking about retiring may want to, and that $2 million would save us $3 or $4 million each year. It would make it tough on the remaining people in each department to absorb that workload, but we can't sustain the financial deficit that we're running. And I would also like to move the question, Madam Moderator.
No, you can't. Unfortunately, you cannot do that. If you've spoken already, you cannot move the question. But thank you for trying. All right. I don't see, I think that's going to be a moot point anyway. Up, Ms. Barrows? Ms. Barrows would like to move the question. Do I have a second? Mr. Ferris has seconded that. All right, so the question has been moved. Ms. Barrows is very excited that she did. All right. That this is not debatable. 2/3 vote to move the question. And we'll set up the voting. The voting is open. Ten seconds. Voting is closed. And question has been moved and passed. So that takes us back to the motion. Article 4, Motion 3, it's a majority vote, and it's on infrastructure for $9,645,615. And let's open the vote. Ten seconds. Close the vote. And the motion passes 151 to 20 with 4 abstentions. That now takes us to Article 4, Motion 4, Health and Human Services. Ms. Bodenhofer.
That the sum of $77,142 be transferred from free cash, and the sum of $1,618,258 be raised by taxation and appropriated for the purposes indicated. All sums voted for salaries are to be expended in conformance with the official budget of the Finance Commission unless otherwise voted by the town meeting. All sums voted for new equipment shall be expended for items listed in the budgets approved by the Finance Commission and voted by the town meeting. As displayed in the budget book, restrictions by salaries totals, operating expenses totals, and capital expenses totals are explicitly included into this vote. This is for Category 5, Health and Human Services, for a total of $1,695,400.
And Mrs. Sullivan is seconding, and on the motion, Ms. Bodenhofer.
FinCom unanimously recommends this.
Okay, so this is Health and Human Services. Do I see any discussion? Yes, Mr. What's? Oh, hold on. Is that a point of information? A point of privilege, Red? What? No, it's motion 4.
We
motion
skip
4.
over number 3 because that was the schools, and we'll come back and do that as motion 8. So the categories don't line up with the motions right now.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Ms. Bodenhofer. So this is motion 4. Anything on the motion? All right, I'm not seeing, I see a hand in the back there.
Chris Jordan, District 4. Can somebody please elaborate on the amount of personnel in each 3 of these boards and committees?
All right. It is, Mr. Mizuko, do you have that? And it is also in your budget book, Mr. Jordan, but let's let Mr. Mizuko. Again, the number of the FTE count is in section 4 of your budget book, along with the org charts and other supporting documentation. Go ahead, Mr.
Thank you, Madam
Mizuko.
Moderator.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. It is page 4H-47. The Board of Health or Health Department is 8 FTOs, or 8 full-time positions. The Council on Aging and Senior Center is 5.5, and Veteran Services is 2.
Is there a follow-up, Mr. Jordan?
No, there is not. Thank you.
All righty, thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Mankiewicz.
Ms. Makowitz, District 7. What precipitated the huge jump from last year under Board of Health and Council on Aging?
Mr. Mizuko?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. We had some federal funds that were offsetting some of the services in those departments. Those have expired, so we're booking the fully burdened cost of those departments.
Is there a follow-up? No. Okay, thank you. Ms. Gia?
Hi, Keikio, District 6. I'm looking at Veteran Services. In 2025, it was 361,579, and for 2026, it's less money. Is there a reason why?
I actually know the reason, and I think I might be looking at him back there, but Mr. Mizuko, do you want to take it?
Sure. If you're referring to the overall veterans budget, the largest cost in there is our Chapter 115 program. That's a program where we provide a direct service to veterans. It's a state reimbursable program. So that number tends to fluctuate every year based on what the prior year's expenditures were. We do have an obligation to pay that, so that is sort of like a commodity cost that could end up going up or down based on what the particular needs are in a given year. And as for any salary costs, you sometimes see a fluctuation if an employee who was at the top of their scale were to leave and somebody changes and comes in maybe at the bottom of their step scale, that number may go down.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Howard? Well, can you wait for the mic, please, sir? Thank you. He's right there.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Alan Howard, District 2. I'm also Chairman of the Council on Aging, and I'd like to ask our director, my dear friend, how many volunteers we have at the Council on Aging that take the places of innumerable extra staff. If you would, Carrie, please, could I ask you to do that?
All right. Let's get a mic over.
Thank you, Madam Moderator.
That's all right.
We have about 16 volunteers that are in the front desk. They would basically be 2 full-time employees each day, 5 days a week. And then we have a numerous amount of volunteers that deliver our meals, run our programs, pick up our supplies, things like that. So we have over 40 volunteers that work at least 4 to 10 hours a week.
Super, thank you. Is there a follow-up, Mr. Howard? No? Mr. Howard's good. Anything further? All right, I'm not seeing any hands, so let's put this to a vote. This is Article 4, Motion 4, Health and Human Services, a total of $1,695,400. Majority vote, let's open the vote. 10 seconds. All right, close the vote. With that, we'll close the vote. And the motion carries 167 to 6. That takes us to Article 4, Motion 5, Culture and Recreation. Ms. Bodenhofer.
Moved by the Finance Commission that the sum of $140,691 be transferred from free cash and the sum of $2,951,368 be raised by taxation and appropriated for the purposes indicated. All sums voted for salaries are to be expended in conformance with the official budget of the Finance Commission unless otherwise voted by the town meeting. All sums voted for new equipment shall be expended for items listed in the budgets approved by the Finance Commission and voted by the town meeting. As displayed in the budget book, restrictions by salaries totals, operating expenses totals, and capital expenses totals are explicitly incorporated into this vote. This is for Category 6, Culture and Recreation, for a total of $3,092,059.
All right, and Ms. Sullivan is seconding, and Ms. Bodenhofer on the motion.
FinCom unanimously recommends this.
Thank you. I do have a registered speaker on this, Mr. Brody.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Steve Brody, District 4. I'll be speaking about the Memorial Day celebration, which is listed. Now, I am very concerned about the security of the Memorial Day parade. I recommend that Route 1A at Winter Street be completely blocked off in both directions during Memorial Day parades. And the same is probably true at Nichols Street. And this would only be for about 1 hour. Now, last year, the people marching in the parade were exposed and vulnerable to the cars on Route 1A. There was no protection, especially opposite the church on the left side, that I noticed. And as they marched on up Winter Street and crossed over Route 1A. My opinion, the parade route should be completely sealed off. And through you, Madam Moderator, I'm asking that the town to please plan ahead and keep our Norwood parade safe. Thank you.
Mr. Mizuko, do you want to just respond to that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Moderator. Through you to Mr. Brody, I have already spoken to the police chief about that, and we will do it.
All right, beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Mizuko. Ms. Mankiewicz.
Ann Makowitz, District 7. I'm wondering if this is an area where we could maybe eliminate some items as far as recreation goes, or perhaps even increase fees to offset a little bit the budget.
Do you have anything specific in mind, or it's just a general question?
Perhaps charging admission for some of these things. Perhaps going through and increasing the fees at the rec center and any of the other areas where we charge fees.
Okay, thank you for the suggestion. Mr. Mizuko, I don't know that there's a response on that.
I think there is, if you would allow.
Yeah, but I'll let you go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just in brief, the rec department, like all of our departments, periodically reviews their fees and raises them, whether it's for classes, for pools, or for camps. So those fees are sort of always going up at different times. We try not to raise everything all at once, so they are raising fees. And the rec department is currently staffed in this budget at 4 full-time employees. There used to be 5 full-time employees at the rec department. We had a vacancy, and given the general budget constraints we have, they're actually down from where they were a few years ago, but historically where they were years prior to that. The rec generally doesn't charge for most of their larger events, but there's fees for the Civic, there's fees for the pools, there's fees for gym memberships.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mizuko. Any follow-up? No, seeing none. All right, is that Ms. Quinn?
Thank you. With regard to the recreation...
Ms. Quinn, I know who you are, but everybody else may not.
With regard to the Recreation Department budget, it looks like some items were moved into the revolving funds, and I wondered if that's an attempt to make them self-funded?
Mr. Mizuko?
Thank you. I don't think the rec department can ever be self-funded, to be clear. It's not going to generate enough money. We're trying to make sure we're categorizing what salaries should be in the revolving fund and what salaries should be in the general fund to make sure we're charging things appropriately. That's all that, we rebalance that every couple of years.
Is there a follow-up?
Yes, so following up with the last speaker it looks like those are mostly for summer programs. Is there the possibility of looking at whether or not it's worth keeping both pools open?
Mr. Mizuko?
So the short answer is yes. The long answer is I expect we'll be having a discussion about the future of two pools once we get Haas finished and open and we see how we're running. At this point, we're planning to have both pools open this summer. Haas is going to be freshly renovated after a $5.5 million+ renovation. Father Max is going to be a different discussion. There's a considerable amount of work. We're going to hopefully limp it along through this year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn. Anybody else? All right, I don't see any other hands. So well, let's put this to a vote. This is Article 4, Motion 5, Culture and Recreation. It's a majority vote, and the voting is now open. Ten seconds. Let's close the vote. And the motion carries 161 to 11 with 3 abstentions. That takes us to Article 4, Motion 6, the first of shared costs, and this is the facilities budget. Ms. Bodenhofer.
By the Finance Commission that the sum of $424,969 be transferred from free cash and the sum of $8,914,861 be raised by taxation and appropriated for the purposes indicated. All sums voted for salaries are to be expended in conformance with the official budget of the Finance Commission unless otherwise voted by the town meeting. All sums voted for new equipment shall be expended for items listed in the budgets approved by the Finance Commission and voted by the town meeting. As displayed in the budget book, restrictions by salaries totals, operating expenses totals, and capital expenses totals are explicitly incorporated into this vote. This is for facilities for a total of $9,339,830.
With Ms. Sullivan seconding, and on the motion, Ms. Bodenhofer.
FinCom unanimously recommends this motion.
Okay, and just to let people know to just why facilities, we will be doing the rest of the shared costs as the next motion. We do facilities separately because it's an actual department that has people in it versus just an expense like health insurance. Anything on this motion? Ms. Dixon.
Doris Dixon, District 1. I have to ask, are we saving money by doing it this way? I know that was the goal, but at this point, somebody's got to ask.
Mr. Mizuko.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Unequivocally, yes. We would not be where we are with our buildings and our capital facilities if we hadn't switched to a shared facilities department when we did. It has been probably the best change in municipal government that we've done in 20 or 30 years in Norwood. It's worked out far beyond how we thought it would, largely due to the credit to the team that leads in the department, the team that takes care of our buildings and our facilities each and every day.
Follow up, Ms. Dixon?
Kind of a combination question. How many outside trades people are we still using, and how many full-time employees are there?
Mr. Mizuko?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. In terms of the outside trades, it really depends on the project that we're doing. Usually if it's a skill set that we don't have. I'll give you an example. We renovated a bathroom at Town Hall a year or two ago. I don't think we used any outside trades. That was entirely just our in-house team. Sometimes there might be some electrical work or plumbing work that's a little bit beyond us. We still use outside contractors for HVAC maintenance. We've always looked at some point, we're going to look at having somebody do that in-house, but it's about balancing what we're spending, where we are, and what's available in the in the market at the time. As for the total FTE count, if you give me just a moment, 68, 57.6.
Thank you.
Anything further? Ms. Barrows?
Good evening. I'm just curious.
Ms. Barrows,
oh, sorry,
please.
Carrie Barrows, District 8.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just curious about the grounds, the maintenance of grounds costs. It fluctuates from 15 to 284, to 30 to 290, and I'm just curious about the fluctuation there.
Mr. Mizuko?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. When we created the facilities department, we had a couple of groundskeepers that were transferred into tradespeople. And between the DPW and the facilities department, they had to pick up some grounds maintenance, and it's easier to contract those services out rather than replace those staff. That staff. Some of this has just been correctly aligning where we budget it for. We try to make sure if the two departments are doing the same thing, it's in the same line in each department, but that doesn't always work. So that's why there's been a fluctuation there. It's primarily for our outside ground services.
Ms. Barrows, follow-up? No. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. I don't see any hands up. So let's put this to a vote. This is for a first of shares costs, facilities for $9,339,830. It's a majority vote, and the voting is open. Ten seconds. Let's close the vote. Motion carries 163 to 13. That takes us to motion 7, Article 4, motion 7, shared costs. Ms. Bodenhofer.
Moved by the Finance Commission that the sum of $166,682 be transferred from water and sewer receipts, the sum of $2,126,480 be transferred from free cash, and that the sum of $44,608,646 be raised by taxation and appropriated for the purposes indicated. All sums voted for salaries are to be expended in conformance with the official budget of the Finance Commission unless otherwise voted by the town meeting. All sums voted for new equipment shall be expended for items listed in the budgets approved by the Finance Commission and voted by the town meeting as displayed in the budget book. Restrictions by salaries totals, operating expenses totals, and capital expenses totals are explicitly incorporated into this vote. This is for shared costs for a total of $46,901,808.
And Ms. Sullivan, you're seconding. And Ms. Bodenhofer, I know you have something on the motion as well as what the note means that's on there as well.
Yes, the FinCom unanimously recommends this motion, but I also want to point out that you may see a slight discrepancy between this and what you may be seeing in your budget book, and that has to do with the state and county assessments. Every year, the state gives us a significant amount of money, but they also charge us money. Fortunately, they give us a lot more than they charge us, but we have to pay that. That is included in our budget book for you to see, but it is not something that we have to vote on because it's just mandated by the state. So the state and county assessments of $2.8 million and the property tax overlay abatements exemptions of $1.1 million and the state offset for library aid of $82,000 are mandatory charges that must be funded through the tax levy. These amounts are not subject to town meeting appropriation and are accounted for separately in the total rate calculation.
Thank you, Ms. Bodenhofer. Any discussion? Mr. Lynch.
Ed Lynch, District 7. So on the on the debt service, so there's 12.5 million on interest we're paying on these loans in 1 year. Is that accurate? Thank you.
Ms. Bodenhofer?
Debt service includes the interest and whatever amount of principal we have to pay back every year. It's like your amortization table for your mortgage.
Okay, so that includes the principal.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lynch. Any other discussion? All right, seeing no hands on shared costs for $46,901,808. We're going to put that to a vote. The voting is now open. This takes a majority vote. Ten seconds. Close the vote. Motion carries 156 to 14 with 13 abstentions. Oh, 3 abstentions, sorry. My bad. All right. That takes us to Article 4, Motion 8. Ms. Bodenhofer.
Moved by the Finance Commission that the sum of $2,970,836 be transferred from free cash, and the sum of $62,321,881 be raised by taxation and appropriated for the purposes indicated. This is education for $65,292,117.
All right, and Ms. Sullivan, you're seconded. On the motion, Ms. Bodenhofer.
FinCom unanimously recommends this, and I just want to point out that due to state law, this is a little different from the general government categories. Town meeting votes on just the bottom line budget.
Yep, we vote on the full amount, not on individual line items. Superintendent Luff, I believe that you have a presentation.
I do, Madam Moderator. Thank you. I'd like to thank Madam Moderator and the town meeting for having me here tonight. It's a pleasure to meet you all in this wonderful forum. I've met many of you already, but I wanted to share with you tonight the school department's budget for FY26 and share that personally with you. Next slide, please. The budget before you here represents key improvements within the district, but also an array of time and effort since October that really we went through to ensure that we were looking at every little area that we could to provide the right services for our kids, but also to make sure that we were being cognizant of taxpayer funds. The key improvements here that you'll see is the opening of the new state-of-the-art Coakley Middle School. The town has supported the opening of the school and provided many funds for that, and we need to make sure that we staff that appropriately as well next year. There are structures in here that enhance the academic performance for our students. There are also legally required services for our students, such as special education, ELE services, things that we have to provide, that we have no choice of, also with an eye on looking at ways we can provide those services in a more efficient way. There are safety initiatives in this. One of the largest comments that I had in my entry plan that had more than 7,000 ratings was around safety in our schools, and so there's a focus on safety in this budget as well. And there are required costs for collective bargaining agreements and individual contracts, special education tuition, curriculum supplies, transportation salaries, professional development, and stipends to support professional learning communities so our staff can be those folks who are really driving the instruction in our district. I will share that about $3.3 million of this budget is in collective bargaining increases alone, as well as transportation combined. Transportation combined and collective bargaining. So those alone are about $3.3 million of the increase to this budget this year. This $65,292,117 budget represents a 6.7% increase, and that is a large increase over the Norwood Schools FY25 budget. But it also includes the addition of 6.6 FTE positions from FY25. And again, that includes the opening of the Coakley Middle School, bringing up 290 students to the 5th grade, whereas it's easy to shift some positions up, but certainly not all positions up from the elementary levels to do that. Really, we focused on fixing the underlying structures within this budget process, really with an eye on the long-term future. So as we have to make difficult budget decisions next year, we'll be able to actually do that while continuing to maintain good services for our kids. Next slide, please. Norwood's undergone a lot of population changes. We're looking at 3,648 students in 9 buildings next year. This also includes our out-of-district students who are receiving out-of-district services in special education schools. I share with you this slide, and I want you to focus on the high needs section there that notes 2,085 students, or 58.3% of the population. Now, these are our students, students who live in Norwood, who are raised in Norwood, and who we educate in Norwood and have a responsibility to do so. That 58.3% is more than half of our population of kids. And the numbers below them, the English learners, the first language not English, the low income, the students with disabilities, and I note to you the numbers there as well as the percentages. Those may overlap because you could have a student who has EL but also has special education services, but those 4 categories make up the high need student population. So 2,085 students within our district have one of those needs. And this is an important number simply because the state looks at this too as a major factor in the money that they give us through their Chapter 70 allocation, or the money that they provide to us, their share of the educational services. They saw these numbers this year and saw fit to give us an additional $1.1 million in Chapter 70 funds to support the schools due to these numbers. Again, these are our students. They are here. But I wanted to kind of give you that fact. And if you're trying to figure out how 58.3% goes into 3,648, it's not going to be perfect because they don't include the out-of-district numbers in the percentage-wise. So that's closer to 3,575 if you want to do the division facts. Next slide, please. Someone asked me at the informational sessions, and I appreciate those sessions because it was a great way to get some of the questions, is what is our per pupil expenditure? Right now, we are at $22,144. Now, that is slightly above state average, and that has gone up over the years. But I share with you the slide where the star is. That's where it shows the $22,144, where the state average is $21,885. That is $289 per student greater than state average. I will share that in 2021, that difference was $1,336 above state average, and in 2022, $831 above state average, and 23, which is FY24 last fiscal year, is $289 over state average. So we are, since in the last 3 years, reducing the difference between what we pay compared to the state. Next slide, please. Again, I had shared that we've gone through a tremendous process here. Mr. Manning and I, who's our Assistant Superintendent of Finance, we walked in the door and we said, okay, let's look at the budget, right? Let's look at what we've been doing here for the past 10 years or whatnot and see where we land. We asked all of our cost center managers to start looking really early. Bring us things in October. We want you to go line by line. We want you to talk about what is required for level service, those services that are necessary to provide things that we're giving now. And then also be prepared to come and talk to us about what you might be able to give up, but also what those things are that you need that might be improved. So there's no direct line as we've gone through this budget. It really is a question about what we need to improve, but what we can reduce as well, and then what we can sustain and manage. We met with every cost center manager in November, had conversations about those things, and then we had a preliminary budget that we recommended to the budget subcommittee and full school committee in December, and that included both the level service budget, but also an improvement budget. We did major cost center reviews with our budget subcommittees as well as with our school committee. So if you were able to see those, we had the special ed department and the ELA department go line by line with the school committee and the budget subcommittee, the instructional departments for curriculum, technology departments, transportation departments. We did class size enrollment analysis at our middle school, high school, and elementary, really focused on where we could shift there. And we brought forth a budget of about 8.7%, actually, I think at first. I think it was 8.7. Yeah, it was a little higher than that. We talked about shifting of programming to reduce where we could reduce while improving other areas to minimize those needs. We had a ton of collaboration with our town partners, BBC, FinCom, everyone, our town partners, town manager, and really went through and decided through that process that we needed to reduce. So we reduced from our original budget $883,697 from that preliminary budget. And we made some really difficult programmatic decisions in that process, and I'll share those in just a little bit. Finally, in March, we had a final vote by the school committee after hearing from the public and a finance commission recommendation to support the budget, which you've seen here tonight. Next slide, please. So I share what's included in some of the major highlights here because I want you to know that although we only have 6.6 positions that we're adding to the operating cost, there are a tremendous amount of shifts and changes that we've had to kind of put a baseline down and a floor for the future to ensure that we're improving again, but looking for efficiencies. So again, staffing and operational costs to support Coakley, right? A big investment in that school, and we have to invest in those kids and ensure that we use those funds wisely. So there are 12.8 full-time support positions that are in that budget, as well as the current 5th grade, 12 5th grade teachers that are moving up, the general teachers moving up to provide those services to the 290 kids next year. Most of those have been done through transfers or reductions in other departments, with only 6.6 being added to the overall budget, and that is the overall addition to the budget. We have had some curriculum coordination budget funds in there to ensure that we are providing the appropriate evaluation and required legal evaluation services for our staff at the Coakley. And there are 3 additional buses within this budget as we've gone through a transportation bid, and we had to add 2 additional buses for the transportation to Coakley as the 5th graders are now going around town. Next slide, please. Staffing to ensure the safety and security of our students. As I shared, my entry planning was clear that there are disciplinary issues, there are events, and we have to prioritize safety for our kids and for our staff in the schools. So within this budget, we have 2.0 FTE behavioral interventionists. These have been requested for years. And they've been added to provide direct support to our general education students and support our staff to ensure student behaviors are reduced. I will note that these kinds of positions are Mass Health eligible, so if you were here on Monday night, these are positions that we can be able to get revenue from Mass Health, so we are looking at positions where we can provide revenue back. Also added a 1.0 Director of Safety Compliance and Communications in our elementary, to ensure stronger district oversight over safety and discipline, policy development, training, compliance. This position is going to coordinate safety training, develop interventions and practices for students with behavioral issues, and really operationalize our district safety plans, which are very large. It'll further have an avenue where we're talking about communication strategies to make sure we're communicating with the public. I believe I heard someone the other night say, let's get the websites up, make sure we can see those things, and we want to make sure we have somebody to do that. But I will also share, we need someone that can train staff, so staff can be equipped to do what they need to do. And some people have asked me why not somebody in the police department, and I share that it needs to be a school-based person that understands the compliance basis in schools, such as bullying prevention and intervention laws in schools, such as school discipline procedures and policies, such as Section 504 to accommodate for our students. Someone who can train our staff so in the future we can make sure that our staff are out there able and have what they need to do these tasks. Next slide, please. In this budget, also, as I shared, there are collective bargaining and instructional materials and support needs here, costs related to collective bargaining, cost of living, COLAs and stipends, individual contracts. There is some funds for special education tuition. Although we have 1 additional student in our budget next year going out, those funds, those monies do increase. We are lucky to have circuit breaker reimbursement coming back to support those funds. Curriculum supplies, transportations, professional development, and again, the professional stipends to support professional learning communities. Next slide, please. Again, we've been looking for efficiencies everywhere we've gone. I want to stress that so much, and it's been a very difficult thing because there's been some programmatic implications that we have made, one that is dear to many people's hearts and that we heard about multiple times in our school committee meeting, and that's the reduction of our Latin program at the high school. And that's so we could provide and shift that position to provide world language for our 5th grade students who have never received it at the middle school when they come next year. So that's 290 students that will be receiving world language now. They have not received it before, in comparison to the 35 students that currently receive Latin at the high school. And it's a struggle, but that was a difficult decision that we did make. and through a specialist schedule change at the elementary level. And when I say specialists, I mean librarians and art teachers and music teachers. We had and wellness teachers. We had folks kind of spread out in a different schedule. We modified that schedule, and that allowed us to move a position up to the middle school, where we had budgeted that prior. It also allowed us to increase some of the services we're giving in art, music, and wellness. However, it does reduce some of the librarian services within the district to equalize those services at the same level as music and art and PE. And those are challenging decisions, and there are more challenging decisions to come. I hear town meeting. I see the future, and we're recognizing that, and we're going to continue to work through looking at efficiencies as we move forward. Next slide, please. But I want to thank you and thoroughly appreciate the support of all of you supporting this FY26 budget, trying to provide the best services we can for our kids, but looking at structures and efficiencies to minimize impacts on future budgets moving forward. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
All right, thank you, Superintendent Luff. All right, I do have a registered speaker as we open up the discussion. Ms. Mankiewicz, you registered?
I realize doing the school budget is a difficult task.
Ms. Mankiewicz, can you?
Ann Makowitz, District 7.
Thank you.
I was a full-time teacher for 11 years until Prop 2.5 eliminated my job. Since 2009, I have been substitute teaching in multiple schools all over the area. I have 4 different areas that I want to ask questions about. Has our enrollment increased or decreased?
Superintendent?
Increased.
Is that because of the acceptance of refugees and immigrants, and what? What is the factor?
Madam Moderator?
Yes, Superintendent?
No.
Okay, thank you. I didn't think so. In conjunction with that...
Is there a follow-up?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
In conjunction with that, I believe last year I was told that you're supporting 51 languages in ESL. That's difficult. How many teachers do you have to help with that?
Mr. Lepp?
Yeah, we have a number of ELE teachers. I believe the number is around 8, if I had to guess, and we can get that number finalized for you. But we do have 1,098 students whose first language is not English, and 594 students who are English learners.
So do you feel that you've budgeted enough to help these kids?
I do. As part of this budget, we've added ELE teachers, yes, through shifts in other ways.
Okay.
All right, Ms. Mankiewicz, do you have a follow-up?
I have 2 more areas I want to ask questions about. All righty. The 58% that you cited, how does that compare to the neighboring schools that we're always compared to, Walpole, Dedham, etc.?
Superintendent?
I don't have that information in front of me, but DESE has a wonderful website where you can look at that if you look at selected populations.
Thank you. The final question that I have is that I went through and totaled up all the instructional materials for every single school into one lump sum. I did not include hardware, software, rentals, and library in that sum. It's $452,626. Now, as a substitute teacher, I do not understand why schools are supplying kids with pens, pencils, and erasers that they break, throw away, and misuse, or write 2 things on a piece of paper and then throw them away. In ancient times when I was in school, we were responsible for supplying our own things. The other thing I see repeatedly is students destroying Chromebooks and misplacing chargers. Have we changed our policies on who's going to pay for these repairs? And is there an area in here as far as pencils, pens, paper, et cetera, that couldn't be shaved off this budget? That's an awful lot of money.
All right, Superintendent, we'll give you a second there on, I think there's 2 questions, one on the Chromebooks and one on supplies for students. such as paper, pens, pencils?
I will share that I don't have the exact numbers of how many pencils and pens and papers we do have. I will share that. But we did shave off $80,197, and much of that was instructional materials when we did our budget reduction, so we did look at that. And the second question was around technology, and yes, there are charges for laptops in many cases that if they are broken.
All right, thank you, Superintendent. Anyone else? Right in front of Ms. Mankiewicz. We'll make it easy.
Michael Bergeron, District 3. Excuse me. There's two questions I want to ask. The first one is, I noticed in the previous slide, what is a wellness teacher? What actually does that function?
It's a gym teacher, but they now focus on health. Really
They
health
call
as
it
well, so
wellness.
they call it wellness, yeah.
Gym teachers call it. The other thing, what does a Chromebook actually cost?
Superintendent, do you know that one?
I would guess between around $400 and $500 each, but I think we'd have to get that number perfect for you.
Do all students get them in our system, or at what age do they start getting them?
Superintendent?
So the middle school and up gets them.
Middle school and up.
But the elementary has carts, right, so kids can access them during the day while they're in the classroom.
Okay. And finally, this is not intended as a criticism. I'm just curious. What was the theory behind moving the 5th grade to the middle school?
All right, so, I mean, why don't we have Ms. Stewart, well, actually, or Mr. Slater could probably answer that, but I mean, we can talk, that's kind of been asked and answered and voted on, by the way.
Maybe I was dozing.
You might have been, yeah, it was a $150 million project you might have been voting through, but, just saying. Does somebody want to just quickly?
A quick explanation.
Quick answer.
I don't want
Ms.
to do
Stewart would love to answer that. Again, Mr. Bergeron, we voted on it here, and the town voted on it as well. It was an override.
As I've aged, I sometimes fall asleep at inappropriate times.
Good evening, Teresa Stewart, School Committee Vice Chair, and also District 4 Town Meeting Member. So that was a very thorough discussion we had in 21 and 22. It was a unanimous vote of the school committee in 21 and 22. We thoroughly analyzed keeping a 6 through 8 versus going to a 5 through 8. And after extensive looking at cost savings, efficiencies, and also really being able to offer our students the best education that we could, we made the decision to do the 5 through 8. I'm very proud, as I know Mr. Slater is as well. Mr. Slater is the chair of the middle school building committee of the building that we are building and opening in the fall. Moving grade 5 to the Coakley enhances the programming that grade 5 will get in a number of areas that Mr. Luff was referring to. And it also, very importantly, opens up a lot of space at all 6 of our elementary schools. So we can reimagine and repurpose space utilization to give a better education to our kids in K through 4 as well.
Okay, so it's going to benefit the students, and it also opens up the space.
Absolutely.
Right, thanks.
Thank you,
very
Ms.
much.
Bergeron. Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Let's, right over there, sir.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Anthony Ketchel from the Great District 7. My question is for Superintendent Love. When we were looking at that slide, I was listing, I believe, 58% of the student population being of high needs or expenditure. Do we have the data from the previous 4 years as to what those percentages would be, or 5 years?
The superintendent, would you like to take that?
I don't have that in my chart, but last year it was roughly the same number, and prior to that it was lower. So it's increased over the past 4 years, but the last 2 years are relatively similar.
Okay. Is there a follow-up?
It's kind of a general question, and I don't think we have the data for the answer, but what would you attribute that high percentage to, though?
Superintendent?
It's a big question, and we analyze things. Obviously, we have a special ed audit coming in that we're going to be looking at on June 4th at our school committee, and so that might answer some questions on how we're determining eligibility for kids. But I think kids are coming in differently than they have been in the past, and I think we have to recognize that some kids do have high needs, and those kids live in Norwood.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, let me move over to Mr. Easy.
Thank you, Paul Easy, District 3. I just have a question. I'm not sure if the superintendent, through you, Madam, if he can answer this, but like in South Norwood, I know we saw some numbers up there in the beginning, 3,000 whatever students in the town of Norwood. Like, I'm just have a question about South Norwood. I know in the pipeline, it's been approved, a couple hundred apartments are going to be coming into South Norwood. I'm not sure, we don't have the answer to how many students will be there, how many will go to the Balch, how many will go to the middle school, but do we have capacity to handle these students, these new students that come into the town?
Superintendent, and I think the question is on the fluctuation of number of students, is there capacity?
Yeah, so we continuously look at enrollment projections. So we have looked at that, and one of the things that we're doing is redistricting next year for 2026, 2027. And we do. We've looked at different classrooms, classroom sizes, and where we are, and we believe we do, especially with the move of the 5th grade to the Coakley.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Churchill, did I see your hand?
Thank you, Rachel Churchill, District 5. 2 questions, please. I saw that Little Mustangs is now broken out in its own line item, which makes a lot of sense, and I'm actually surprised that's not how it was done before. So it's about $1.5 million allocated to that school. So I have a couple of assumptions maybe you can correct or expand upon, but it's probably being moved out from somewhere else into its own line item. I'm wondering where that came from. And I'm also wondering if there's any on-the-ground change for either students or teachers now that it has its own line item in the budget.
Superintendent?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So most of it was moved from the Willett. So the Willett had the budget of both LMPA, Little Mustangs, as well as Willett, which is our kindergarten school. So we shifted that. They wanted their own entity. They wanted to be their own school. They're in a different location, so we did separate them. And so they are already staffed in the way that they were located at the Savage Center, and Willett was already staffed in the way it was located at the Willett. But we had to break out the curriculum and the supplies from the Willett line because Willett was paying for all of that that was happening at LMPA as well.
Thank you.
Is there a follow-up?
An unrelated question, Madam Moderator. I didn't see any separate items for health insurance on the school district. Is that under the general government?
That's shared costs.
I see. Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, Superintendent, I figured that one I could answer. Mr. Brody, and then we'll go to Mr. Alfanos.
Steve Brody, District 4. Superintendent mentioned world language. What is a world language, please? Can you please explain?
Superintendent?
Teaching Spanish, teaching French, and currently this year teaching Latin.
How many teachers would that require?
There would be around 4 at the middle school level and multiple point FTEs at the high school level.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alfanos.
Greg Alfanos, District 9. A couple of questions, Madam Moderator. On DESE's website for the last 9 or 10 years, Norwood averages around 25 to 28 teachers leaving the district. 2 or 3 of them we know they retire. Why do we keep losing so many teachers every year? And then I have another question. I'll wait on that one. So.
All right, on the teachers, Superintendent Love?
I can only speculate through my entry planning process that teachers are worried about safety, teachers are worried about support that they have for kids. Those are some major reasons, and teachers want to feel like as they're supported and have what they need to provide the expertise that they have. So we're looking at things like PLC, leadership, ways for them to drive the instruction in their schools and to feel safe while they're in school every day.
It's very costly to constantly rehire new people. So,
and
I think
you
it's a
have
major
another
factor.
question?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
In reference, with many years now, it's always been mentioned that mandates and laws are driving the cost of the schools. Part of the problem for town meeting is we don't know what those laws and mandates are. Are those posted on the school website?
Superintendent?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. There are, if you look at our civil rights data page on there, there are things that will talk about IDEA, which is the special ed law, things like Section 504, which is about accessibility for students with impairments, things like ELE, civil rights, all those things are there.
Follow up?
One more follow-up? Okay.
Yeah, just so all the federal and state laws and mandates are there, because I know a lot of folks in here want to know what's driving the cost. So I just want to make sure that those are both state and federal are posted there.
Yeah, and there's also a, Madam Moderator?
Yeah, go ahead.
There's also something on our new budget. We have a budget book that we're using for the future that we did not bring to town meeting for various reasons. We have one budget book for the town. But within that, there are descriptions of all the departments that we provide that includes the ideas of legally required services in there as well, with descriptions.
And we can find that on the website?
You
On the school's website.
I think Ms. Stewart wants to add to that.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to add to a couple of questions being asked. You're looking at the operating budget that is allocated tonight by town meeting, but in order for us to fully fund what we are mandated and required to do, if you watch our school committee meetings, we talk a lot about our grant funding and our federal funding. And without that grant funding and federal funding, we would actually not be meeting the needs of the students in our ELE, our English Language Learner Program, or in our special education department. So I just think it's really important that people at town meeting understand that. A lot of these mandates are either unfunded or not fully funded.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Mr. O'Fanis, you all set?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Yes, ma'am. Whoop, hold on. Wait for the mic.
Yes, thank you, Madam Moderator. Monica Phillips-Young from District 8. A quick question. You listed French as one of the languages you were going to teach. Are you going to, by any chance, include Haitian French?
Superintendent Love?
I would have to talk to our world language department on how we would want to do that, but we're definitely, French is there, could be a possibility.
It's very different from Parisian French, which I had when I was in school, and that was about it. And in my professions, a lot of my clients and patients were speaking Haitian French. I learned all the swear words, but I couldn't get the basics of that language, and I think it's probably very valuable to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lynch?
Thank you, Ed Lynch, District 7. Welcome to Norwood to the superintendent. So, does any of this money in this budget include teaching the families of the students, like the adults and the younger adults, 18, 22, 21, and so on and so forth? Is that included in this budget?
Superintendent?
I think what I can share with you is that we have family liaisons that are grant funded, not through the operating budget, that are actually supporting families to help students in school.
Okay.
Is there a follow-up?
Well, the follow-up is, obviously just a comment. It's not easy, but I mean, it just seems you're like between a rock and a hard place because it's unsustainable. These numbers are just, But that was, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. All right, move over. You didn't speak on this one yet, have you? Not yet. Let me talk to Mr. Thornton.
Mike Thornton, District 1. Question for Dr. Luff, if I could, please. You referenced a minute ago issue of safety. And I'm wondering if you could possibly touch upon what specific plans you may have in your funding adjustments for the next fiscal year regarding safety in schools, particularly in middle and high school, where safety issues are most prominent.
Superintendent?
I mean, a big primary focus in this budget was to hire a person that would do the training for staff to provide appropriate behavioral interventions for kids, prevention mechanisms, intervention mechanisms, and then appropriate disciplinary procedures for when things don't go right. So it's really the training of the staff to be able to provide appropriate intervention, give them the tools and the strategies that they need to reduce some of those things, and then to be able to communicate out as needed when families and community members need to know when something's happening.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Neil Rizzo?
Katie Neal Rizzo, District 2. I had actually looked up the percentages of high-risk students prior to that question. Canton is 35, Dedham is 45, and Walpole is 29.7. And the Chromebooks cost $300 each. I've seen that bid. I've also lived here for almost 16 years now and have spent the entire 16 years watching a budget crisis in the school department. Since my now 15-year-old was in a carrier and watching school committee overflow meetings at the Savage Center, and cuts and cuts and cuts and cuts. We used to have 4 language options at the high school. We now have 2 language options at the high school. And with one operational override in the town in the last 150 years, and health insurance costs going up, 13% increase this year? Well, we're only allowed to increase taxes 2.5% a year. We're just going to keep running into this fiscal crisis every year, and we're going to have to keep making cuts to the school until we address the issue. And I'm more concerned now than ever with federal and state cuts coming to Mass Health and our other grants. My question is, do we have any idea how many positions are covered by Title I, II, III, IV, and Medicaid or Medicare?
Superintendent?
And how we can cover those costs or absorb the costs of those salaries should that money be taken away?
Yeah, there are roughly 26.7 full-time staff paid from grant funding. That's about 6.0 Title I teachers, 20 paid from special education, IDEA, and then 1.3 paid with Title III. So it's a good number of positions. One of the reasons, I will share today that we get news from DESE that they've already received their grant money for FY26, so that federal funds are already there. They have that, so that's good news for FY26. But there is a stabilization or reserve fund that this body voted on Monday evening that could help support us if those funds all of a sudden went away while we figure out how to best manage fiscal crisis.
Thank you. Is there a follow-up, or you're all set?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Mr. Shea.
Jerry Shea, District 8. Through you, ma'am. Do we have a behavior problem in our schools?
Super.
And if so, do you have any plans to curtail it?
A behavior problem?
Yes.
Is that a staff problem?
No, I'm talking about, maybe so, I don't know.
I don't know. He's the new guy, so, you know.
I'm looking at a chair here that's been broken for 5 years. No one's ever fixed it.
What I would suggest is that we have kids that are different kids as they have been. There have always been behavioral difficulties in the school setting. What we tolerate, what we don't is different these days. But I think that there are behavioral incidents that are occurring in the schools that probably should not, that probably could be prevented. and we're going to work to change that with the budget that we have in front of us.
Is there a follow-up, Mr.
Yes,
Shea?
there is. Are we working with the Norwood Police Department to bring officers into school?
Superintendent Luff, yes, and you can answer that question, please.
I will just share that we have school resource officers at our middle and our high schools who are there to support students and to be there if there's any issues that occur. And then we have liaisons for the elementary schools that work with each individual elementary school if there's a need that arises.
So the answer is yes.
Do you think that's enough?
Superintendent?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jordan?
Chris Jordan, District 4. Through you, Madam Moderator, to the Superintendent, can you please elaborate again on the amount of students in the Latin program that's going to be non-existent next year?
Superintendent?
Yeah, we have currently 35 students for this year in Latin, 24 that are in Latin 1 as freshmen, 5 in Latin 2 as sophomores, 1 student in Latin 3 as a junior, and 5 students in Latin 4 as seniors. The enrollments projections when for freshmen for those 24 was 30 when that started. So kids will take it, slowly reduce from the program, and then by the time they get to year 2, it drops. The history is that it drops tremendously from there. There are 23 students that were interested in Latin as freshmen next year, which is 7 lower than it was the year prior. So that number has been projected to stay similar. So it's about 35 students this year, but 23 students that we know of next year that would continue to stay in Latin. And we're going to offer it to online, which is not the best scenario, but it is 35 students this year compared to the 290 students we're going to offer world language to in 5th grade next year.
Is there a follow-up, Mr. Jordan?
Yes, there is, Madam Moderator. I'm just trying to think about how to frame this. How many Spanish teachers do we have at the school? At the high school, for example.
Superintendent?
I will have to pull that number for you.
It's quite a bit, right? It's like a dozen?
About 5.
5?
5.
Okay, so maybe district-wide it was quite higher then. I just feel as though okay, let me frame it this way. The Latin program is gone to help fund FTE somewhere else, is that correct?
It's gone to fund world language at the 5th grade level.
So that seems kind of counterintuitive then, right? We're reducing world language to then fund world language at another school. Do we feel as though maybe money would be better spent reinforcing more language options at the middle school to then bolster the program in the high school?
Superintendent?
I mean, if I had my way, I would start world language even younger than that, because that's where kids really start getting those skills and they can enhance that way. So the earlier the better, actually. So by the time they get to the high school, they're more equipped to actually be able to move forward in those other languages.
Do you have a follow-up, Mr. Jordan?
Yes, I do. One last point. With all the free cash being thrown around at all these different scenarios and different committees and funds and this, that, and everything, I'd like to make a motion that enough free cash be designated for the continuation of the Latin teacher next year. In addition, I'd like to add another FTE to be moved to the middle school in order to have a feeder program for that high
Mr.
school
Jordan,
program.
I have to
Yes,
call
ma'am.
your motion out of order because we don't vote on particular items for the school budget. You vote on a bottom line for the school budget. So if you add money to the school budget, the school department can do whatever they want with it. You can't designate a particular area to be spending it on.
Okay, Madam Moderator, thank you. I would like to make a motion that the school department add an additional $250,000 from free cash in order to hopefully do something good with the money.
So, Mr. Jordan, you're making a motion to add $250,000 to the school budget from free cash. And is there a second? All right, do you guys want to come up here and write out the motion? So this is to increase the school budget by $250,000. We have a second. We're going to get this written up. So this is now an amendment to raise the school budget. And again, it can't be designated for any particular item. It would just raise the school budget by $250,000. All right, while they're writing it out, and Mr. Jordan, I think you spoke specifically on why you are making this motion, this amendment. Do we have any discussion on the amendment? Mr. Brody.
Steve Brody, District 4. I'm more in favor of these world languages, French or Spanish. They're more valuable. I worked for a company that served the entire world, and boy, I really wish I knew more French. I tried to speak French when I spoke to people in Canada and even in Europe. So I'm against this motion. I think you're staying with the world languages of French or Spanish is going to be more valuable to the students. Thank you.
All right, again, I want to remind the body that this is not about world languages, because if you, in any amount that you add to the $65,292,117, and we'll get that exact number, can be used for any purpose. Town meeting does not designate what purpose that the school budget is a bottom line vote by town meeting. All right, Mr. Ferris.
Ed Ferris, District 8, as moderator. I have to say I'm against this, and it cuts to the very deep. Because if I had my druthers, I'd add another $1 million plus to the school budget. Because, frankly, after what was said before, and knowing what we have coming up over the next 2 to 3 years, I'm very concerned that, yes, we're running into a deficit again. We've had one override passed, and, before that override, we went through so many budgets of cutting and cutting and cutting, and I'm talking about going back to 2005, 2009, where we were struggling to keep programs, and the budget was getting shifted all the time, and the schools were getting hurt a lot. And I shouldn't say the schools were getting hurt a lot, because it's really the kids that are getting hurt a lot. I would love to see something like this go through, but I don't think this is the right way to do it. And I would hope that as we go through budget balancing the following year, we take into account that when we balance, and we have to accommodate at the school level, just like we've accommodated here, the only people who are truly affected are the kids. So I understand Latin got cut, and I understand we have kids that are outstanding right now that have to take online courses because guess what? They're not going to make that minimum 3-year language that they need to be able to get into decent schools in college. That directly affects them. Is it a small number of kids? Absolutely. Do we go better off by respending our money by putting in, ETL at the middle school level? Yes, we do. But we're still affecting kids. So while I'm against this, I think it's the right direction, but it's not the right time. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Ferris. Mr. Hall.
John Hall, District 6. I am also opposed to this amendment, but more on process than on substance. This is a very complex, you're talking about the entire budget for the school. In fact, you're talking about an entire budget for the town, since that's where the $250,000 is coming from. And we're going to assume that a couple of us from the open floor can come up with a better decision on trade-offs and uses of funds than this group of experts have developed over months of painstaking comparisons and options and such. I just don't buy it. I really don't. In fact, if this does pass, my first recommendation to the school system would be put this where you think you can use it. Don't pay any attention to why they submitted it. Because I personally don't think that that particular use of extra money would be at the top of the list for the schools. And I want them to be free to act on what is the best in their deliberate judgments.
Oh, Ms. Taylor, did you have your hand up, or you're not going to put it up now? Okay, cool. Kevin, we're going to give yourself a mic.
Moderator, this is Kevin Broderick, District 9. I would like to move the question.
All right. Question has been moved. And Ms. Phelan, I think I saw you raise your hand for the second. So that question has been moved. Again, 2/3 vote. That means debates will cease on the amendment. Are we ready to vote? Just a sec. All right, the question has been moved. The voting is open. Again, this is moving the question. Ten seconds. Let's close the vote. All right. It passes 152 to 22. That's clearly a 2/3. So now that brings us to the amendment. Give us a second to just reset. And this is an amendment to increase the school budget by $250,000 transferred from free cash. It's a majority, yeah. This will be a majority vote. All right, the voting is now open. Ten seconds. Let's close the vote. And the motion fails. 29 yes, 141 no, and 4 abstentions. All right, we're now back to the main motion of $65,292,117. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Gunning.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Brian Gunning, District 3.
Mr. Superintendent, during your presentation, I didn't see anything about basically a report card on how the town is doing educating our students. I went on a site, it's called School Digger, there's another one that rates how the schools are doing. And what I looked at was Norwood's in the Tri-Valley League. There's 12 schools. School Digger rates 348 schools in the state. Norwood's rank in the state was 189, which within the Tri-Valley Conference, we only beat one school, and that's Norton. Norton was 204. Within the Tri-Valley Conference, Norwood pays more per pupil than all but 3 schools. We're paying $22,144. Millis is ranked 93, better than us. They pay less than us, $20,662. Medway is ranked better than us. They're 47. They spend $19,622. Holliston is ranked 59. They spend $17,506. Ashland is 66. They spend $17,354. It doesn't seem as though we're getting any bang for our buck, and the students aren't being educated. We're in the middle of the pack. That's a C grade. And then you talked about safety. You follow a program at Norwood. It's restorative discipline. And that follows along the lines of reformative justice. And just recently, there was an executive order in April of this past year saying that schools in towns should be doing away with the concept of restorative discipline. And my question to you is, we're not getting the job done in the classroom. It seems that part of the problem is that the teachers don't feel safe, the students don't feel safe, they're not learning like they should for the money we're spending. We're not getting our money's worth. And are you going to comply with the executive order banning restorative discipline?
Superintendent.
What steps are you taking?
All right, that's your question, Superintendent Luff?
I would just suggest that restorative practice has nothing to do with the executive order. It's a totally different subject.
I would, Madam Mayor?
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, there were 2 executive orders, and the one I'm speaking towards is restorative discipline, and you're telling me that that wasn't an executive order?
Superintendent?
What I will share is that restorative practices in the schools are very important to ensure kids learn from their mistakes, as they always have, and then we can teach them better behavior so they can be better citizens in our schools.
Anything further, Mr. Dunning?
There's an executive order banning the practice and ordering cities and towns in the Commonwealth and every other state in the Union to do away with this practice because it doesn't help kids. The bigotry...
Hold on. So, Mr. Dunning, please watch your tone, and
I'm making a quote.
I know you're making a quote. It's asked and answered. Do you have another statement to make or another question?
My statement was a quote by Ronald Reagan that the soft bigotry of low expectations is what we're seeing in our schools. We're not demanding enough of our students, we're not demanding enough of our teachers, and we're not demanding enough of our families. And this is the result. We're in the middle of a pack, and we spend far more than any other city or town.
Thank you, Mr. Gunning. Thank you, Mr. Gunning. Please, hey, Mr. Jordan, come on. All right. Anybody who hasn't spoken yet on this? I see fingers being pointed there. Okay. In the back.
Good evening. Courtney Rao Rogers, District 6.
I'm looking at the Mass Department of Education website about our verified, non-ad revenue funded school data. And our graduation rate is 5 points higher than the state average. Our dropout rate is less than 1%, which is 2 percentage points lower than the state average. Our post-secondary school enrollment in four-year college that would be 6 percentage points over the state average, and 9 percentage points in two-year college enrollment over the state average. Our student performance on MCAS could be better, and we have a very detailed budget plan on which to bring intervention programs to the public schools in this budget that definitely doesn't cover all of the needs of the Norwood Public Schools, but having once been involved in creating this budget and watched it very carefully as a town meeting member in the 8 years since, I know the struggles that they're having. Budgets are actual pies. There's only so much to go around, whereas, you know, human rights and student dignity is not a pie and everyone can have some. And if we want to look at school data and to use when thinking about a school budget, I would urge you to look at the data that the state collects that is not funded by private public interest groups that have agendas to privatize and malign public education and keep students from being educated. We provide so much to students and have for decades. When I was a student here in the Norwood Public Schools in the 80s, 70s and 80s, I was given pencils and paper when I didn't have any. When I was a high school student in the 80s, I was able to take the world language of my choice. As a school administrator currently, I know that most colleges require a language 2 or 3 consecutive years, but many more colleges are actually providing tests for students to opt out of language requirements because they know that students access world language study in a variety of ways that isn't formally done within the schools. So there have been many arguments for and against this school budget. I would urge you to pass this school budget. It is a great step forward in many more steps forward we need to take as a community to educate all of the students in our town in the 51 languages that they speak, in the varied levels of housing that they live in or may potentially live in once they're built. It is our responsibility.
Ms. Reynolds, do you need more time, or?
I don't.
Okay.
Please vote for the budget.
Thank you. Mr. Connolly. And, all right, Mr. Connolly moved the question. Ms. Quinn seconded. Again, that is not debatable. 2/3 majority. Give us a second to set that up. You're moving the question on Article 4, Motion 8, which is to go to vote on the education budget. All right, moving the question is now open. Ten seconds. Close the vote. All right. Question has been moved. We go back to the main motion. This is a majority vote. And again, this is for the education budget. It's a bottom line of $65,292,117. The vote is now open. Ten seconds. Vote is now closed. Motion passes 149 to 24 with 4 abstentions. Moving on to Article 4, Motion 9, Water and Sewer Fund Infrastructure. Ms. Bodenhofer.
And that the sum of $23,943,878 be raised by rates and appropriated for the purposes indicated. All sums voted for salaries are to be expended in conformance with the official budget of the Finance Commission unless otherwise voted by the town meeting. All sums voted for new equipment shall be expended for items listed in the budgets approved by the Finance Commission and voted by the town meeting. As displayed in the budget book, restrictions by salaries totals, operating expenses totals, and capital expenses totals are explicitly incorporated into this vote. This is the water and sewer fund total for $23,943,878.
And Ms. Sullivan is seconding on the motion.
FinCom recommends this motion.
All right. We do have one registered speaker, Mr. Palmetier. You asked to speak on this one?
Palmetier, District 8. I'm here to say thank you and to point out something that I'm grateful for. Many people tonight were talking about how important it is to sharpen pencils and how the little things can add up. About a decade ago, John Carroll was still, the town manager. And I stood up and I said, I get these bills in the mail, but I pay my bill out of my checking account. So why am I getting envelopes? And a lot of you remember, we got the green ones for the water bills, right? We got the blue ones for the. And I told him, I said, couldn't we save money if there was some way on the software to change it so that those of us that were direct billed that came out of our checking account just didn't get the envelopes. We'd save in the old days, you had to get the multicolored envelope, you had to print it with the name, you had to pay to have them mailed out, we got them, then you had to pay to have them recycled, so we paid again. Well, we got a new town manager, and it changed slightly, our bills changed. We started getting these glassine envelopes, so you save on the printing costs of labeling them here, right? And, I imagine by buying them in bulk, these generic envelopes, that was probably cheaper too, right? Well, 2 months ago, I stopped getting envelopes. I don't know who to thank. And I'm hoping you can tell me, is it somebody in the IT department that figured out how to code it so that I wasn't getting the bill anymore and so that we weren't wasting the money, at least now, the envelopes, and my wife will be very grateful that these are going to leave the house now. I've been saving them up for years just so I'd have this opportunity when the change came.
Chair, I think this is one question that Mr. Mizuko will gladly answer.
And we don't have to recycle them and either, so we save on purchase and we save on recycling. So.
Mr. Mizuko.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. While I would love to take credit for this, credit is due to the great team at our light department, Kevin Shaughnessy, our superintendent, Dan Morrissey, our chief of operations, Jason Haber, who is our ops manager, and particularly Kathy Trady, who actually runs our billing and administration for light, water, and sewer. So all credit due to them.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Palmetier.
And can you take these and reuse them? Thank you.
Anything further on the motion? Oh, I think Carrie McCarthy will take them. You got a customer. Our senior center director is willing to take them, Mr. Palmetier. All right. I love it. Ms. Taylor.
Jean Ferrara Taylor, District 8, line item 1626. What's 697,668 miscellaneous expenses? It just seems like it's a big figure to have nothing with it.
I think he wanted you to take it. Mr. Mizuko, are you taking it, or do you want Mr. O'Neill to take it? Mr. O'Neill gets to take this one.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So that is a line item that so this fund is meant to be self-supporting. So all fees for water and sewer are supposed to cover all costs. So in addition to that, as an enterprise fund, there should be a fund balance as there is for the general fund. The general standard is 10% of the fund should be the certified free cash for this fund. This fund is nowhere near that at the current moment. It's about 2% of that. It's about $600,000 in the current balance. So one line item we have in here is to increase that fund balance over the next 2 years to the 10% target. So that is what's in there as that line item to increase that going forward.
That's 697,668?
Correct.
Okay.
Is there a follow-up,
I guess
Ms.
we've got
Taylor,
it.
or are you good? You're good.
I'm sorry.
You're all set?
I sure am. Thank you.
All right.
Francis Hopkins, District 1. This is a enterprise fund, and it's my understanding that enterprise funds need to fundamentally purchase services from the town budget. And I was wondering why we have $20 million in insurance costs under shared costs and $300,000 in this fund also for insurance costs. If we're buying them from the town, why are they in both places?
Who wants to take that? You want to take it? Yeah. You got it.
So through the Madam Moderator.
Mr. O'Neill has it.
So again, there's a combination. So there are certain charges that we can classify as indirect costs, as you see in this budget. So those are the ones I mentioned before. Some of the other costs are allocated to this directly. So that's what this is. So in terms of the liability insurance, that's allocated directly here. Health insurance is actually through the indirect costs.
If I may, Madam Moderator, can you explain this concept of indirect cost again with respect to things that we purchase fundamentally from the town?
Mr. O'Neill?
Sure, through Madam Moderator. Again, so we don't purchase anything through the town, but we are offsetting the cost of some services that the town provides on behalf of the Water Sewer Fund.
Madam Moderator?
Yes.
That says we're double dipping on this. If we're going to be charging in the shared cost account and then putting it back in here to reimburse the shared cost account, it looks like we're doing it twice.
I think Mr. O'Neill wants to address that.
Yeah, through Madam Moderator, that's not true. So if you look in the general fund budget, we have a revenue line item. So that is increasing our revenue on the general fund. So we're offsetting that. So we are not double dipping.
Anything further?
Madam Moderator, shared cost part of general fund, is that what we're getting to here? I didn't see anything, on page 48, 3C 48, that's your shared cost. It shows $20 million in insurance. I don't see anything offsetting that somewhere.
I think Mr. Mizuko would like to take that one. Well, Ms. Bodenhofer wanted to too, but I'm going to call on you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So there's direct costs and indirect costs. If we have a laborer who is 100% a water employee, his salary and his benefits are costed to the water fund, and that's the number that you see there. The indirect costs are the portion of, for instance, the engineering department's costs. Those, because they're indirect, because engineering spends about 20% of their time on water and sewer, indirect costs we, by state law, have to treat as a revenue to the general fund. It ultimately washes, but the direct costs are for those direct employees and their exact costs. The indirect costs are portions of other employees who provide a service, a portion of accounting, a portion of the director's health insurance, for instance. So that's the delta between what's an indirect and a direct cost.
One more, if I may, Madam.
One more, Mr. Hopko.
So then, the indirect cost is covered by the shared cost, and the direct costs are covered by the fund.
Mr. Mizuko?
Sort of. So the indirect cost, right? Yes, in the health insurance budget is the health insurance budget for our town engineering department. The 10% of their insurance that gets charged to water sewer gets treated as a revenue By law, we have to do it that way. The employees who are actually the water employees, 100% of their costs are in the budget.
Looks a little funny, but I think that I'm getting some sense of what's going on.
I'm sure Mr. Mizuko or Mr. O'Neill or Ms. Bodenhofer would be happy to walk you through it a little bit more after the meeting, Mr. Hopcroft, if you'd like.
Fortunately, I have great faith in all of them. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Anything further? All right. Seeing none, let's put this to a vote. Water and Sewer Fund Infrastructure, $23,943,878. It is a majority vote, and the voting is now open. Ten seconds. Let's close the vote. Motion passes 147 to 11. Ladies and gentlemen, that completes the budget. That takes us to Article 5 and a motion by the FinCom. But before, let's everybody just get up for just a little stretch. This is going to be the seventh inning stretch. Everybody stretch your legs for a second. All right. Let's move on to Article 5, please. Article 5. The FinCom with the vote, with the motion.
Moved by the Finance Commission, indefinite postponement.
Knew you guys would like this one. Indefinite postponement. Ms. Sullivan, you had the second. Ms. Bodenhofer, is there an explanation on this?
This was put in as a placeholder in case the Board of Assessors needed an offset, but they don't.
All right, so this does take a majority vote, indefinite postponement. Well, but I'm going to do a voice vote on this one because I have a real suspicion that this one is going to go over. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those, lots of energy. All those opposed, say no. All right, motion carries. That takes us to Article 6. And we are going to start the community preservation articles. Article 6, 7, and 8. I don't believe we'll get through all the projects tonight. We'll see how we do, but we can break it up. But let's get a start on it because it is not even 9:30 yet, folks. So this is a series of 3 articles on the Community Preservation Fund. The first is going to be the annual allocation of incoming funds for future spending. And this is a vote of intake of money. Many of the percentages are prescribed by the statute of what we can do here. And with the motion is Ms. Bodenhofer, again, the FinCom.
Moved by the Finance Commission that the following money be set aside in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44B, from Community Preservation Fund revenues for future spending as recommended by the Community Preservation Committee for the purposes indicated below. The CPF reserved for open space and recreational use of land, $105,073. CPF fund reserved for historic resources, $105,073. CPF reserved for community housing, $105,073. CPF reserved for administrative and operating expenses, $52,536. CPF budgeted undesignated reserve account, $682,975 for a total of $1,050,730.
And Ms. Sullivan, you're seconding? And Ms. Bodenhofer, you have anything on the motion? I know that we're going to have the chair of the Community Preservation Committee also speak on it.
Yes, the FinCom recommends this, but then we'll defer to CPC.
Okay, I'm going to call on Catherine Walsh, who is the chair of the Community Preservation Committee. I think she's got a slide. We're ready to go?
I do, and we have nothing to add to this motion, and we are fully supportive of this as well.
Thank you. Go ahead.
We have nothing to add. We agree with the apportionment and
Oh, I
it's controlled by the
thought you were going to
statute.
go. You were going to go through the funding.
Oh, I'm happy to go through the funding. So the 10% to, which is required by the statute, to open space and recreation, historical resources, community housing, 5% for administrative expenses, and just quickly, you can see from the graph what the proportions are. So with that, if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them.
I think you have another slide on the balances also.
Oh, sure, happy to do that. So the current fund balances are represented on the top line. The estimated revenue and the recommended appropriation for this year's funding represents the second line. And so for the available appropriation, we're at a total of about 3.3 million. And you can see the categories above: open space, historical, and housing. Any questions, comments?
Mr. Brody.
Steve Brody, District 4. How much money was received from the state for the community preservation, please?
Do we have the breakdown?
Previous slide. The estimate, 141,000.
There you go. There, Mr. Brody, what it is
That's
it's a
the-
total of $1,909,000 is it is the amount of here. The total that we got from the state was 141,103.
Now, where's the amount from the state? Because that 141, that's an estimated state match. It's not what was actually received, please.
That's correct. It is an estimate, and it trues up at the end of the fiscal year.
My question is, what did this town receive from the state during the year, please?
So again, it fluctuates, Mr. Brody. It is a percentage based on the 1% that we get. This is what is estimated right now. The history of what we have received is in your budget book. But it's a pretty darn good estimate because the state does send out the estimate of what they're going to give us for the matching funds.
No, in previous years, the actual amount from the state was shown on the screen on a slide. And I'd like this committee for next year, for what they received this year, to actually show the actual amount that is really received from the state, please.
All right, well, they'll take that under advisement. I don't think this is a change from what you've seen in prior years. It may have just not been set as an estimate. It's a pretty darn good estimate, and the total of the $1,050,730 is an extremely good number to use. So again, all right, thank you, Mr. Brody. Anyone else? This is to allocate funds for community preservation. All right, seeing nobody else, we're going to put it to a vote. This is a majority vote, and it's allocating the $1,050,730 into the various funds under the Community Preservation Act. It's a majority. Let's open up the vote. The voting is now open. 10 seconds. Close the vote. Passes 140 to 8 with 3 exceptions. Let's move on to Article 7. Ms. Bodenhofer with the motion.
Moved by the Finance Commission that the sum of $52,536 be appropriated from the Community Preservation Fund Administrative Reserve Account for the administrative and operating expenses of the Community Preservation Committee in fiscal year 2026.
And Ms. Sullivan, you're seconding? Ms. Bodenhofer on the motion?
This is recommended by the Finance Commission.
Okay. And again, folks, that this is for the funding of the administrating and operating accounts. It cannot exceed 5% per the statute. And that is MGL 44B. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, we're going to put it to a vote. This is a majority vote. Let's open the vote. Ten seconds. Let's close the vote. Motion carries 138 to 10 with 1 abstention. I'm going to have Mr. O'Neill address, Mr. Brody, your question around the receipts that have come in from the state.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So, Mr. Brody, to answer your question, we got $161,000 in this year's budget. So that was an actual receipt from the state. So the estimate for next year is a conservative estimate, which is the right way to do that with that, because again, we don't know the state's finances.
All right. All right, that moves us to Article 8. And this is going to be a series of motions, one on each project. We can discuss each project separately that are all being funded from the Community Preservation Fund. All right, so with motion 1, and let's do the motion and then I'll explain what the options are here. Go ahead, Ms. Bodenhofer.
Moved by the Finance Commission, based upon the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee, that $14,000 be appropriated from the Community Preservation Fund balance reserved for community housing to be spent by the Community Development Department for the purpose of funding a 3rd year of participation in the Shared Housing Services Organization.
And Ms. Sullivan, you're seconding. Ms. Bodenhofer?
This is recommended by the Finance Commission.
All right. And Ms. Walsh, I think you have an explanation on the project.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. We've received an application from the Community Development Department for $14,000, and the Community Preservation Committee supports this application. It's for the 3rd year of funding for the Shared Housing Service Organization, and this is a group of 5 local towns, and it's a relatively cost-effective approach to obtain services relating to housing services. Deliverables have included monitoring of housing, compliance with income verification, and resident assistance.
So just a note on all of these projects, and this will carry through. The body has 3 options. You can approve the project, the allocation, you can reject, or you can lower the amount that's funding the project. You cannot raise it. Those are the only options per statute under the Community Preservation Act for projects. So just for the purpose of debate. On this motion, any discussion? Mr. Lynch.
Ed Lynch, District 7. How much has the CPA been contributing for the previous 2 years, if this is year 3?
Ms. Walsh, are you going to take that?
Yes, $24,000.
I'm sorry?
$24,000
24,000 total or 24,000 for the each
total.
year?
And this will be an additional $14,000.
Right.
Is there a follow-up, Mr. Lynch?
There is a follow-up through you, Madam Moderator, of course. How much is the other 5 towns contributing, the surrounding towns? You mentioned them, they're making contributions to this fund too, is that accurate? How much? I mean,
Yeah, how much are the other towns? Ms. Walsh?
Could I punt that to Sarah?
You can. Sarah, Sarah Dixon, our Director of Community Development and Planning, I'll take that one.
I'm Sarah Dixon, Director of Community Development. So every town pays an amount that's indexed to the number of hours they receive annually. So it's indexed to how much they're using the consultant to provide those services. Norwood's contribution is actually on the lower end of that spectrum, which reflects our total number of units on our subsidized housing inventory and also what type of units those are. We have a lot more rental units than ownership units, which just as far as hours that the consultant has to put into monitoring compliance for each one of those reflects a lower number of hours necessary.
Is there a follow-up, Mr. Lynch?
no, I was just curious about what it is, so that was the question. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anything further? Seeing none, we're going to put it to a vote. Again, this is a majority vote. $14,000 to be appropriated, Shared Housing Services Organization, and it would come from the fund balance reserved for community housing. Let's open the vote. It's a majority vote. Ten seconds. Close the vote. Motion carries 141 to 9. That takes us to motion number 2. Ms. Bodenhofer.
Commission, based upon the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee, that $100,000 be appropriated from the Community Preservation Fund balance reserved for community housing, and that $200,000 be appropriated from the Community Preservation Undesignated Fund Reserve to be spent by the Norwood Housing Authority for the purpose of replacing roofs at the Washington Heights Housing Complex.
And Ms. Sullivan is seconded. On the motion, Ms. Bodenhofer?
FinCom recommends this expenditure.
All right, and Ms. Walsh on the motion as well on the project.
Great, thank you very much. We received an application from the Norwood Housing Authority that the CPC is supporting, and this is partial funding to replace failing roofs that are beyond their useful life for 75 units of low and moderate income housing at the Washington Heights Housing Facility. And we currently have a commitment from the Commonwealth for a 1-to-1 match, and there's some optimism that we might potentially get a 2.51 match, which might enable us to replace 100% of the roofing. And so we are wholeheartedly in favor of this.
On the motion. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, we're going to put it to a vote. Again, it's a majority vote. It is $100,000 to be appropriated from the Community Preservation Fund balance reserved for community housing, and $200,000 to be appropriated from the Community Preservation Undesignated Fund Reserve for Norwood Housing Authority for the purpose of replacing roofs at Washington Heights Housing Complex. The voting is open. 10 seconds. Close the vote. Motion passes 148 to 4. Moving on to Article 8, Motion 3, Ms. Bodenhofer.
Moved by the Finance Commission, based upon the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee, that $24,000 be appropriated from the Community Preservation Fund balance reserved for historical resources to be spent within the confines of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30B, with input from the Norwood Historical Commission for the purpose of completing a National Register nomination for the Highland Cemetery, inclusive of St. Gabriel's Chapel.
And Ms. Sullivan again is seconding on the motion. Ms. Bodenhofer.
FinCom recommends this expenditure.
All right, I'm also going to note that the Mass General Law, Chapter 30B, that we are quoting here covers municipal procurement law, because the intent is to get a consultant to complete this application. Ms. Walsh, on the project.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. This is an application from the Norwood Historical Commission to complete the funding, or complete the application funding for the Highland Cemetery and the St. Gabriel's Chapel to be listed on the National Register of Historic Places. As the moderator indicated, we will be bidding these consulting services. $24,000 is an estimate. We hope that the price will come in lower than that. We also have commitment from the DPW that they will help with the maintenance of this facility, which they do currently, if in fact it becomes listed. And we are optimistic, after many, many years of trying to get this listed, that we will move this forward.
Okay, and I do have a registered speaker on this one. Jeff, I think you got a mic right there.
I can run it to myself. Jeff Weidenar, District 9. Thank you, Madam Moderator. First of all, I'd like to thank the CPC for sending us what I consider a higher percentage of projects this year that'll have a clear positive impact on the people of Norwood than some of those that I've seen in the past. Thank you. And that being said, I'd still like to encourage them to be a little more strategic about the projects, perhaps saving up for some big ticket items that we need in the long term. You know, we've heard about some of those things here, and saving up for those would be a great idea. I wouldn't mind if at next year's town meeting we saw only 1 or 2 projects to vote on, because CPC was saving up for that big ticket item or those big ticket items. So with regards to this particular project, I personally don't see how it meets the threshold that I use to evaluate these projects of having a significant community impact. And there are 2 reasons that I'll be voting against it. First, I don't see that there's any guarantee of any gain from it. Say we did get on the National Historical Register, does that guarantee us any funds, federal funds in the future? I don't think it does, and in this era of reduced federal grants, I think it's even less likely to happen. So for me, unless there's a guaranteed way for us to recoup this money, I don't think that there's a benefit to Norwood to be spending it. And second, I'm against the notion of our town possibly surrendering autonomy to do what we want with the cemetery, and instead having to consult with the federal government to make changes because it's on the National Registry. I think that's not a good idea. So for these 2 reasons, I'll be voting no on this project, and I encourage others to join me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weldenow. Anything more on? Yes, sir, right there.
George Durante, District 3. It's a 2-part question. Obviously, we haven't gone through the procurement process yet, but I'm wondering if there have been any preliminary conversations with the consultants about their expectations on the feasibility of this passing through and getting approved after the nomination paperwork submitted. And the other part is I'm wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more about the other attempts that have been made to get this designated on the National Register.
Kristen, you want to get that? Okay. And Kristen, I want you to identify yourself too, please.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Kristen Phillips, I'm the staff person for the CPC. So in terms of what has been done to date at the cemetery, starting in 2010, the town hired at about cost of about $10,000 between 2010 and 2019, the firm of Cram & Ferguson to list the chapel, St. Gabriel's Chapel. So that went through a process, and the response we got from Mass Historical Commission, who administers this program, was that it had to be the entire cemetery in order for it to move for it to move forward. So there's been an ongoing back and forth with MHC, and they have been optimistic. They've been encouraging further or requesting further information and encouraging that this proceed. And I forgot the other part of the question.
The other part of the question was, have there been any preliminary discussions with consultants? Yes.
Yes, so the applicant submitted a cost estimate. They reached out to one consultant, and that was where they got the $24,000 figure. We did touch base with Mass Historical Commission to see if that was a realistic figure, and they said it could certainly be done for that. You know, the experience is probably a range above and below that, but they thought it could be done for that amount, and that was reasonable.
Follow up, if I may.
Follow up.
Any indication from Mass Historic that those goalposts won't move again?
Ms. Phelps.
Thank you, Moderator. No indication. I will tell you that since 2019, the last time we heard from them, they didn't do it, but the National Park Service, who ultimately lists the makes the decision about the listing, has changed the application process. So there was a lot of research done, and that still remains valid, but there's now a new application. Hopefully, I don't think they have any plans to redo that application again. That was within the last few years, but hopefully the goalposts are where they're going to be.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right over there.
Michelle St. Pierre, District 5. I was just wondering if you could explain what the benefits are of being named on the National Register of Historic Places. I'm just curious.
Ms. Phelps, come on up.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. It is largely a prestigious accolade, so to speak. I can tell you that the Historic Commission has been, there are 2 properties in Norwood that are listed on the register, and there is, there's a certain cachet that goes along with, being able to say, oh, we have a historic district, or we have X number of buildings on the register. There are grant opportunities that are only available to properties and buildings that are on the register. Those typically have to do with the exterior refurbishing of buildings. So I know St. Gabriel's was recently done, but I do think that there's a few additional tweaks or repairs that could be made to that building potentially with funds that would be eligible, that the cemetery would be eligible for if it were listed, that it currently is not eligible for.
Follow up, Mr. St. Pierre? No? Okay. And anyone else? Mr. Hall.
John Hall, District 6, and a fellow member of the Community Preservation Committee. I think the 2 questions that had to do with what's the benefit simply weren't looking at this project the same way we were. It's not a source of revenue. It's not meant to be a source of revenue. But in combination with the 2 other properties that are already listed, each of which is rather unique in its architectural design and specialty, we take another step in the direction of having Norwood be not only an established and historically manufacturing town and a nice place for people to live, but an openly historic place. A place where you can come into the town, go visit a few places, each of which has distinctive architectural and historical characteristics that are worthy of consideration. I could imagine that we might get into the position of having a historic district, something that other CPC towns have done with some success, There's one town, and I forget which it is, where you can drive in right now, and when you hit the downtown, what you see first is a large plaque that says, "Welcome to the so-and-so historical district." There's a little shiver, a little buzz that goes through you. Not everybody is going to be turned on by that kind of benefit. But for those who are, I hope you'll vote for us.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. All right, I think Ms. Esco had her hand up. Well, hold on. Wait for the mic. Right there.
I'm asking if I may, Madam Moderator, go to the podium. It's easier to hold these papers. If I could come down to the podium there. I'm asking if I can come down to the podium. It's
Of course you can.
Thank
You're always welcome to come down to the podium. Sorry.
Thank you very much. My name is Tony Esco. I'm from District 5. I'm also the Vice Chair of the Norwood Historical Commission, and I was present and delivered a PowerPoint presentation on Highland Cemetery several months ago at the hearing for CPC when they accepted this project. And I'd just like to say that the cemetery is a beautiful place. Goes back to the 19th century when it was first started. And it is an honor, it is a prestigious accolade to be on a National Register of Historic Places. So that if you Google Norwood, it might come up as places to go, places of interest, and places that are on the historical register. To be on the register is very difficult, and the town has been trying to work on this. I have a letter right here dated 2014 by then Bill Plasko, who was chair of the selectmen even then, and it's a letter to Mass Historical Commission in support of registering, processing the application for nomination, because you must file with the Massachusetts Historical Commission. It's a national program, and it's run by the National Park Service. And if you are lucky enough to get registered, then you are eligible for various grants through the state. But I'd like to read just an excerpt from a National Register bulletin on cemeteries that the National Park Service puts out on cemeteries. Gravestones, monuments, memorials, and tombs found within cemetery landscapes commemorate the lives of many generations of citizens, from founding members of the community to state and war heroes to newest immigrants. Some of the stone carvings represent some of the earliest art and written history in the United States in some of your really old cemeteries, but certainly ours is for Norwood. Many also reflect an important artistic legacy, displaying the work of long tradition or skilled stone carvers and documenting the evolution of funeral iconography. You can see all the different kinds of pictures and engravings and mason work. And many of our founding fathers and prominent families are there. Many of you might be familiar with the chapel, but the whole cemetery has to be taken a look at as a whole. And as the previous speaker, Kristen Phelps, mentioned, the CPC administrator, the town had started working on this with an architect, Cramer Ferguson. And then those of you that might not have been here back in 2016-17, we had trouble with the chapel, it started leaking, and then we passed the Preservation Act, and they got money for that. The whole process had to stop, it got convoluted, it got sent back to Mark Ryan's office at Public Works, and it really didn't belong on him. And the ball just got dropped, and it never got restarted again. And so the commission has brought this back. It is a beautiful, beautiful cemetery. It deserves the accolade, it deserves the recognition. It's over 40 acres of land with over 22,000 graves and over 4,000 veterans interred there. It deserves to be tried again to get it on the National Register of Historic Places. Vine Lake Cemetery, for example, in Medfield is on the register, as are hundreds of larger and smaller cemeteries in Massachusetts, and they generally include beautiful gardens. There was also some landscape done by a very famous architect at the time, a landscape horticulturalist, Reuben T. Woodward. So there are many, many accolades that go to the cemetery that you're probably not aware of. But when we get registered, the whole story will be online, and it will be put in a compendium. The state puts out a compendium of historic places. It's a big fat spiral-bound book, and you get placed in that as well. But it's a prestigious honor, and I would say it's actually included as a planning tool. While not a direct economic benefit, indirectly, it brings attention and honor to your town. Just the way an airport does, you might not think it's bringing direct economic benefit, but still there is an honor and a value to considering national registration, and I hope you will. The Board of Selectmen has been trying to do this for over a decade. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Esco. Anything further? Mr. Shea?
Richard Shea, District 1. Just quickly looking online, there was somebody saying that, we'd be subject to more regulation if you did this. And I quickly looked it up. In fact, being on the National Register makes you less subject to federal interference and regulation and less subject to state zoning and other restrictions on working on it. And so that appears to be actually a benefit, not like a monetary benefit, but just that concern appears to be the opposite of the intent of national registration, as I understand it. But I'm not a lawyer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. Mr. Sheehan?
Joe Sheehan, District 2, and also with the CPC. I just want to address the same thing. I believe when we had a hearing, Mark Ryan came, and he did say that he did not see any problem from the federal angle that would inhibit us in any way or bother his running of the cemetery. And also on the grant issue, it would make us more eligible for grants. Whether we get grants or not, nothing's guaranteed. You don't get to do that until it's time to apply. So I just wanted to answer those. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sheehan. All right, Mr. Palmatier?
Brian Palmatier, District 8. Could I get a little more reassurance on that second bullet up there? Because the properties that are on the National Register of Historic Places that I'm familiar with, once you're on the register, there's a characteristic that you have to maintain. And how much you can alter them or change them or something is sometimes restricted. Obviously, this is a working cemetery. There are going to be additions to it. There are going to be upgrades. There are going to be things like that. Can you give me a little bit more reassurance on that part where it says won't affect cemetery operations, that we're not going to be limited in any way on what kind of changes can happen there if we do on the register?
Mr. Mizuko will take that.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So being on the National Historic Register doesn't prevent you from doing what you need to do with the property. When you hear about, oh, this building is historic, therefore they can't change it or they can't touch it, those are oftentimes either a deed restriction that's done when a property transfers, or they're local historic preservation rules and regulations. So you hear about a lot in Boston, those are local historic preservation rules that they have. There's a Chipotle somewhere in Philadelphia that's on the National Historic Preservation list because the building has some history, but the use has changed. So that's why the use doesn't get restricted. You're still able to use it. It's a cemetery. It's going to continue to be a cemetery. It is still a historic cemetery as long as it continues to operate as a cemetery. So it's not, we don't have a local historic preservation requirement. There's no deed restrictions, although it's going to stay a cemetery. That's not going to change. So those are oftentimes local regulations.
A follow-up?
Follow-up?
One example that I guess I'm looking for a particular reassurance on. I know there's been consideration of a columbarium because mostly now if you have an urn, there's no above ground place to put an urn. You have to get a plot and put it, you're limited to how many can go in the plot. Would that kind of thing, for example, be permissible after we're on the register?
Mr. Mizuko?
The short answer is yes.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Palmatier. Ms. Quinn?
Sarah Quinn, District 2, move the question.
Ms. Sobchak is seconding that. The question has been moved. 2/3 vote stops debate. And the voting is now open. 10 seconds. Close the vote. Close the vote. All right, motion passes 140 to 9 with one abstention. That takes us to the main motion, motion 3, which is $24,000 be appropriated from the Community Preservation Fund balance reserved for historical resources to hire a consultant to prepare a National Register nomination for Highland Cemetery, inclusive of St. Gabriel's Chapel. The voting is open. It's the majority vote. Ten seconds. Close the vote. And the motion passes 114 to 32 with 4 abstentions. All right, that takes us to Article 8, Motion 5, Motion 4, Ms. Bodenhofer.
Moved by the Finance Commission based upon the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee that $175,000 be appropriated from the Community Preservation Undesignated Fund Reserve to be spent by the Norwood Department of Public Works and/or the Norwood Recreation Department for the purpose of constructing an ADA-compliant ramp with associated landscape improvements between the Balch School and Elliott Field.
And Ms. Sullivan, you're seconded. On the motion, Ms. Bodenhofer?
FinCom recommends this expenditure.
All right, and Ms. Walsh?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The Recreation Department has applied for $175,000. There was an original project that was funded by CPA to rehabilitate the court and the outdoor classrooms. There was a ramp that was designed as part of that project and bid, and it turns out after consideration of the ramp and the slope that was required to construct this ramp, the cost came in significantly higher. The design team and the construction team looked at an alternative metal ramp, and it was determined in conjunction with the town engineer and DPW and the Recreation Department that we wanted to construct a concrete ramp that would have wheelchair rails that would be much more functional in this location. And so they're asking for another $175,000. John, we have some other pictures that might be able to see. So you can see the slope here, and the ramp would be located in this area. Next slide, please. This just shows the switchback 30, 30, 30 down on the bottom. And next slide. So here you can get a sense of how large the ramp is, how much concrete is involved in this. And CPC is supporting this in an attempt to gain much more enhanced ADA access to the fields and also the new Bernie Cooper Park.
All right, any discussion? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Anthony Ketchel, District 7. Did I hear correctly when you said an additional $175,000?
That's correct.
So what is the total cost of the ramp?
Do we have Ms. Walsh?
About $225,000. So there's remaining money in the existing park.
Thank you.
It's a lot of concrete.
Thank you.
Anything more? Ms. Mankiewicz?
Ann Makowitz, District 7. Are we getting any ADA federal funding to help with this?
Ms. Walsh?
No.
Okay. Anything further? See. Mr. Bergeron?
Thank you. Michael Bergeron, District 3.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Michael Bergeron, District 3. You mentioned the access to the Bernie Cooper Park. Can you go into a little more detail there? In other words, you'd use this ramp so that you could get wheelchairs into the Bernie Cooper Park? Is that another benefit? I know.
So,
you mentioned
Ms.
that.
Walsh, do you want
Yes,
to?
that's correct. It will enable people to get down to the field and then make the egress to the Bernie Cooper Park.
So that would be an additional benefit?
For sure, yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Bergeron. Ms. Taylor? All right, Mr. Connolly has seconded Ms. Taylor moving the question. Again, this is a 2/3 vote. No debate. We'll get the voting up in a sec. All right, the voting is now open on moving the question. Ten seconds. Close the vote. Question moved and passed. 136 to 11 with 2 abstentions. So that brings us to the motion for spending $175,000 from the undesignated fund to be spent by the Norwood DPW and/or the Norwood Rec Department for the purpose of constructing an ADA-compliant ramp. The voting is now open. This is a majority vote. Ten seconds. Let's close the vote. Motion passes 132 to 13 with 5 abstentions. That takes us to Article 8, Motion 5. Ms. Bodenhofer.
Motion by the Finance Commission, based upon the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee, that $25,000 be appropriated for the community preservation, from the Community Preservation Undesignated Fund Reserve to be spent within the confines of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30B, with input from the Norwood Department of Public Works and/or the Norwood Recreation Department for the purpose of hiring a consultant to complete a feasibility study of the Elliott Field Complex.
And Ms. Sullivan is seconded.
Yes.
On the motion, Ms. Bodenhofer.
FinCom recommends this motion.
All right, Ms. Walsh.
Thank you. This is a joint application for the Department of Public Works and the Recreation Department. And as stated, it's $25,000 for consulting services related to studying the improved playability and to accommodate different types of sports activity and programming at these fields. In addition, they're looking at the green dotted view, a walking path around the fields, and also a potential connection to the Bernie Cooper Park. What's unique about this space is it's already lit, and it's a really great opportunity to enhance the playability of this location. CPC recommends this.
All right. On the motion, Mr. Brody. And I hope everybody has an opportunity to go out and see the Bernie Cooper Park while we're talking about it. And it was a lovely ribbon cutting ceremony the other day. It's really a special place. Mr. Brody.
What are the yellow and the red rectangles? What do they represent, please?
Ms. Walsh?
So I think they represent potential development opportunities or feasibility studies. So these are just graphical representation provided by the DPW and the Department of Recreation that will be studied as part of this feasibility study.
Follow up,
What's
Mr.
the word?
Brody.
I can't quite read something about flag football.
So it looks like there's one half flag football on the left field, another half flag football field on the right. Those are the 2 red rectangles, and a full flag football field in the yellow.
Okay, thank you.
Quite welcome. Mr. Jordan.
Chris Jordan, District 4, 3, Madam Moderator, to the Finance Commission. I just want a little clarification. The Finance Commission endorses this, not unanimously endorses this, is that correct?
Ms. Bodenhofer?
I believe the vote was unanimous.
Okay, I just want clarification because sometimes you say unanimously votes and then sometimes you say votes, and then I just want to, I'd like to hear sometimes from dissenting opinions on the Finance Commission if they weren't unanimously voted upon.
I appreciate that. Honestly, I just don't remember, but I don't think there was any dissent on that.
Okay, thanks.
I think it would be in the yellow sheet, wouldn't it? All right. Anyway, anything further? Ms. Mazzola.
Anne Marie Mazzola, District 8. As part of this feasibility study, is there any consideration going to be given to the facilities that are currently there, perhaps changing the backstop at the softball field to be regulation?
Ms. Walsh?
Absolutely, yes, and drainage studies.
Former president of the softball association.
Yeah, the backstop's a little far. Yes, yes, indeed.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody hear that? No, I don't think they did. Can you repeat the question and the answer? The question they probably heard, but Ms. Walsh, I don't think they heard you.
Yes, just quickly, the question was, is we are going to be looking at the backstops. The backstop's a little bit far away from the field, and yes, we are looking at the backstops, and we'll also be looking at the drainage.
Ms. Makowitz?
Why do we need...
Ms. Makowitz?
I'll never get used to this. Ann Makowitz, District 7. Why do we need 2 half flags? And if this is approved, you will then be coming back to us for thousands and thousands of dollars to create it?
You know what? Does the rec department want to answer that one? Why not? Mr. White, come on. Come on down.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Sam White, Director of the Recreation Department. So for the 2 half-flag football fields, that is just an example. Yes, we will be using those for our flag football program, but this, this example is just to make it more multi-use throughout the seasons.
All right, thank you, Mr. White. Anything further? All right, seeing none. Or are we, oh, nope. Seeing whose hand is raised? Is Judy's hand raised? Okay. Ms. Langone. Oh. All right, you moving the question, Ms. Langone? Ms. Taylor is seconding. The question has been moved. 2/3 vote. All right, the vote is open. This is moving the question. Ten seconds. Let's close the vote. All right, the question has been moved, 132 to 8 with 3 abstentions. That takes us back to the motion, which is the $25,000 to be appropriated with input from Department of Public Works and/or the Rec Department to hire a consultant to complete a feasibility study for the Elliott Field complex. Let's open the vote. Ten seconds. How many people are hearing 10 seconds in their sleep in my voice tonight? Let's close the vote. All right, motion passes 121 to 24 with 1 abstention. All right, in my estimation, we are not going to, we have some registered speakers actually for at least one of the two motions ready. So I would entertain, Mr. Connolly, a motion to adjourn until Monday at 6:30 p.m. And Ms. Taylor is seconded. Thank you, folks. No matter what happens to the Celtics, please, 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 a lot of important things that we need to vote on. All in favor? All opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you.